Yeah, it's green.
This conference will now be recorded.
I'll make sure we don't miss any of your words, Lisa.
Thank you. Well, my name is Lisa Greenveld, and I'm a resident of 427 Golf Course Road. I'd like to say good evening to everybody here from the City Council and also to members of the audience and anyone who's attending via Zoom. Now, can you hear me?
Yes,
All
better.
right.
Yeah.
Shall I repeat my name and address?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Lisa
Yeah.
Grunewald.
Take it from the top.
Take it from the top. Lisa Grunewald, 427 Golf Course Road. Great. In my 30-year career, I have worked with thousands of colleagues, customers, business partners, friends, and family. During these years, I've had many opportunities to provide job performance feedback, and I know how words matter, and I know how words can hurt. And in that moment of truth, when the message is so crucial, delivery can fail, and the message can be obscured. And so I say this with all due humility to the City Council tonight. In a time of coarsening public discourse, ensuring that our publicly delivered feedback remains timely, direct, actionable, and above all else kind is paramount. Recently, feedback was given to Senator Chittenden, in which he was called waffling, unfit, and an embarrassment. I will simply say for myself that if I received public feedback like that in a new job, I would be hurt. I would feel invalidated, and I would feel intimidated here. As President Obama once said, we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. South Burlington grapples with a global climate change and with a housing crisis. These weighty issues and many more require solutions and kindness at the same time. We should strive for an environment where all participants feel safe and welcomed in complex public spaces. Standing here today, I am shaking. I feel vulnerable. Yet I'm here because I have no right to tell my kids to stand up if I'm going to sit idly by. South Burlington is my home. I feel indebted to this community, and I am humbled to be a resident. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell each of you how much I appreciate the time and the diligence and the effort you put into your roles here on the City Council and at the state, Senator Chittenden. So tonight I'm simply asking that here in South Burlington and across Vermont, we lead with kindness in our public discourse towards each other. We show America the best of our brave little state in both words and deeds. I am humbled to speak in front of you today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? Is there anyone online?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to announcements and the city manager's report. So, Tim, any announcements?
Just a quick one. So my family and I went to Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago during the school vacation. Drove to Boston, picked up my other son, and flew to D.C. And we really did D.C. well. We hit all the memorials, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial. We saw the King Memorial from the paddle boat on the tidal basin. We saw the World War II Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial. We went to the Hirshhorn Museum. We saw the Laurie Anderson exhibit. Incredible, absolutely incredible. We went to the Museum of American History, Museum of Natural History, went to the Smithsonian Castle. I was born in D.C., never got to go in the castle. My parents wouldn't take me, I don't know why. We got to finally go in. What a magnificent building, great story. Also got two of my family to go to Arlington Cemetery, went to JFK's grave, and also Robert E. Lee's house and the Tomb of the Unknowns. So, and also the Capitol, and we got to see the edge of the White House, but you can't see much, at least not from the south side. So, it was a particularly interesting experience being in front of the Capitol, subsequent to what happened a year ago, January 6th, and I was grateful for the ability to be there and have everybody be peaceful and enjoying a nice, sunny, beautiful day in Washington, D.C. But what struck me when I go to Washington, D.C. is the immense weight of the Civil War as a predicate for everything that has come after in this country. And when I stand in the Lincoln Memorial and I read two things, and they're inscribed in stone in there for a reason, and one is Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which I know we all know the beginning of that, right? And the other is his second inauguration speech. And it just strikes me so heavily that that memorial and then the King Memorial not too far away and the whole structure of our society and our government really is predicated on what happened in Washington, D.C. in the late 1860s, mid and late 1860s, including the Civil War. So I just can't impress upon you how important that experience was. So I just wanted to relate that to everybody. And if you do go to D.C., see me later. I'll tell you where to stay. It's some really great places to stay in Virginia, on the Metro, 8-minute walk there. And the Metro was very convenient and very fast. So
Great. How long were you there? Because you did a
4
lot.
days.
4 days?
We walked 24 miles.
Whew, you hustled around.
So
A lot of
Good
free
for you.
museums.
it was good. It was good.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Matt?
No announcements. I didn't go anywhere nearly as interesting as Tim.
Okay. Megan?
Yeah. I didn't prepare written remarks, but I will make remarks given the comments there during the public comment period. I'm wearing the stripes tonight for a reason, and they stand for the fields on which American patriots shed their blood.
Megan,
Yes.
can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I really would prefer not having a rebuttal.
I'm not rebutting. I'm just talking from myself. I'm not rebutting anybody. I just want to say this, if I might, that my family roots go back to pre-revolution. I had family fighting on both sides of the revolution, and I know how hard fought this democracy was won. And it does not get won necessarily through kindness. There is a moment for outrage, and defending one's rights is something that our country is based on. I invite everyone to listen to the tape of the House Transportation Committee on Thursday.
Megan, I don't want to go there.
Very well. But I invite you all to listen, to hear how I was offended, quite profoundly. When people give their word, I expect them to hold their word. When I give people...
Megan, I'm
Very
going to
good.
ask you to
Thank you.
curtail your remarks.
So my week last week was not only spent being a professor, which is my day job, it was spent defending the rights of the residents of Chamberlain neighborhood and of the city. I will leave it there. Thank you.
Tom?
So there's a lot of tension in the air right now. I just want to say that I put on my Facebook page just an articulation regarding the topic that we're circling. So if anybody would like to hear my point of view, that it's there. And I do have an apology. I would like to apologize to all of my neighbors for not mowing in the month of May so that the pollinators and the bees will have more time to recoup and otherwise. But I promise to mow my lawn on June 1st. And regarding the other topic, happy to elaborate later on, happy to answer any questions. I stand by every action I took, and I'm embarrassed of nothing.
Thank you. I attended monthly the city and school leadership meet, and we had a great meeting last Friday, and we share kind of what's going on both sides of the street. At least that's what we used to say. I guess they're on the other side of the street now. And so just to highlight and to share with the council what we talked about, the big news, their property transfer, the address has changed. So the school hall or administrative offices is 577 because we divided the building. They have made an appointment to the charter committee, 2 people, Carter Higgins and Dr. Boyer. During the superintendent search, Jessie has applied, and I think we all encouraged her to do that. They were pleased that she did. She did. And Jessie, I thought very thoughtfully, let them know that if they're looking for a very broad group of people that represent all different groups in the city. So she offered to not be considered if they had someone else that represented a constituency that was important, and that she would support the process in any way that she could. We talked about the climate action plan, and I'm hoping that we'll continue that dialogue and really integrate the knowledge and the activities that the schools are doing and the school administration is doing within the climate action plan pathways and actions that are coming up, and they are interested in doing that. We talked a little bit about the impact fees. The school would like to, or is making the case to, ask the council to pass an impact fee on new homes that would be directed to supporting schools and the potential need to build new schools. They're having a little trouble getting organized for the meeting to meet with the one person in the state who is knowledgeable and can really help them. But it's just in an initial review, Jonathan, what's his last name? Slatson did say that he was pretty certain that South Burlington would qualify for having a impact fee. We talked about how the city is trying to align the comp plan, the funding from ARPA, and a community survey to determine needs. And we're trying to work together with the demographer and the school to potentially put together one survey that can address the questions that the city needs to understand around the integration of the comp plan and the ARPA funds, and what the school needs as well. And they're very amenable to that. We just haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's still on the list of things to do. And they really want to, I think we see that integration in a survey of helping develop the city growth curve in the broadest sense, so we really both have an understanding of how that might affect each other. David brought up some concerns around Act 250 and its impact on school enrollment. And apparently, when you have an Act 250 application, there's a questionnaire that they send to the superintendent. And they give, I think, the number of homes being built and anticipated, bedrooms, and how many kids their children, educatable children, will be moving into the development. And then the school is supposed to respond with, we have room, we have that capacity. It's a capacity question. And David was pretty frank and said, we really don't have the capacity. So he has to send them in at some point, but he hasn't yet. He hasn't responded. And we didn't know what the impact of that is. So I think in a future steering committee meeting, we will be talking about that, because there certainly is a balance as we go forward. And David kind of said, it'd be good to know for the housing that's developed that doesn't require an Act 250 to have the congregate numbers, so we really can plan. They can plan in terms of, this is where we really meet the breaking point, and we need to put more trailers in potentially, or that kind of situation, planning for that growth, and the city, potentially thinking about other ways to handle that. So it's yet another complex question as we go through how we develop and where we develop and what the schools need and how we pay for that. So Paul Connor is working on that, and well, when we have a joint meeting, we can discuss that. And I suggested that maybe the council, when we get some of that information, have an agenda item. So we discuss it from the city perspective, and the school do the same. And then when we get to a steering committee meeting, we all will have thought about it and can share those responses and potentially have a plan or not. And then lastly, David was very concerned about the pupil weighting proposal in the legislation. And Tom, you, I'm sure, know all about that because you're on education. And he said if it goes into effect, they're estimating that the impact on South Burlington is between $400,000 and $600,000, which is a lot of money. And
Is
it's
that for the whole state or for our district?
that's for our district. So, and it isn't finalized yet, and it's got so many moving pieces that it's hard to really know what the impact is and what to do. He's just concerned, as you can imagine, for the next superintendent to handle that. But I think it just is. It's another example of sort of I think the dilemma that our city is in, because I think David said we're the only community in the entire state that has the student enrollment going up. Everyone else is going down. So when changes are made potentially to address maybe some of those issues and the equity around that, the impact on South Burlington is just incredible. And then, of course, we're also in this crosshairs of, well, this is the place people want to build homes. And that dilemma is, you know, we bring more people in, but we don't have schools big enough, or we then build more schools and the taxes go way up, and, you know, we don't become perhaps as desirable a place as we have been in the past. So it's really a concern for our community, and unfortunately, we probably don't get a whole lot of empathy in the legislature. But it's real for this community, and I think just lays another I don't know, level of complexity in our discussions as we go forward. So it was a really good meeting, and I think we've, you know, set some goals in terms of communicating and working together, hopefully. So that's about all I did, I think.
Chair, really,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I'm sure the Energy Committee and your team is already looking at it, but it's very likely that the amount of money available for municipal energy resilience grant is going to increase to $500,000, up from $350,000. So it's something that I would hope the Energy Committee and the Climate Change Committee look at ways that we can invest in municipal buildings to reduce energy consumption, because there's going to be more money, but also means fewer cities and towns are going to access that money. It's if everyone got the max, it would be 70 towns.
Okay.
But you don't have to take the max. But something to consider, expanding the scope of where we want to save energy in our municipal buildings.
Well, that's great. I have a list of other questions to ask you. I won't do it now, but I was talking with the chair of the task force, and there's some information that I think you might share or be able to direct us, so that would inform them of what money's available, and I think I'll be following up with you as well. So thank you.
Helen?
Yes.
Can I just add one other item
Yeah.
as an announcement? Sorry.
Uh-huh.
So we did have a pension advisory committee meeting last week. I forgot to mention that. And Pat Blizzard was here from SEI. And of course, I mean, everybody's looking at the market, and it's lost some value over the last few weeks. And then the biggest question marks are the enduring infections in China with COVID-19 and the lockdowns and the suspension of people being able to work in factories. And so supply chain disruptions in China and the effect on the rest of the world, and then also the war in Ukraine. So, anyway, the one question that Pat answered was that we believe, and it's kind of hard to tease this data out of all of the stocks that they have in our portfolio, but he was pretty certain that less than 0.2% had any direct relation to Russian companies. So, I mean, I think that's pretty small, and it's kind of hard to totally divest if they are inside other companies, you know. But I think that's a pretty good number for now, and so I don't think there's much we can do about that. So, but I think that that's a positive thing, that it's very small at this point. So that's all I want to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Jesse, managers report.
Thanks. I have a number of updates for you all tonight and for the community. Kind of along those lines, Chittenden County is now rated as high in COVID transmission. It is certainly hitting our staff and our families. So do just request that people continue to wear masks in our building and stay home if you are sick. For the council, just a reminder, I've mentioned this a couple of times, we are transitioning to Office 365. And for you all, that will mean multi-factor authentication on your emails. So Mike Mott, our IT director, will be here between 6 and 6:30 before our next council meeting to help move you over to that. And if that time doesn't work for you, you can set up a one-on-one time with him later on, or he can probably direct you how to do it remotely. For last meeting, we talked about our FY23 policy priorities and strategies plan, which was a great conversation. As the chair referenced, we are looking at how to integrate these processes with the kickoff to the comp plan update as well. So we would like to include the Planning Commission in about half that day to do that kickoff of the comp plan. So I am going to send around a doodle poll with so many people participating to try and find a day that the most people can participate. It's just a heads up that is coming to you. We are in the final stages of adopting the Red Rocks Management Plan. As you know, starting in 2019, there was a staff-appointed City Natural Area Management Plan Task Force with representatives from several of our committees and staff from Recreation and Parks and Public Works around best practices for managing the open space that we own as a community. So Ashley and that team have done a great job putting that together much of the time through COVID, through virtual meetings. It was presented to the NRCC and the Rec and Parks Committee in March. They supported it, their recommendations were integrated, and we will administratively launch that soon. It's a huge step forward for us, and we'll look forward to doing those management plans for our other public spaces as well. Along those lines, I did want to share that Ashley Parker, her last day with the city will be Friday. She is going to the city of Burlington, so we are having some competition there. We've
A different kind
more
of
the other
job,
way.
though. A different kind of job.
So she's going to be their director of capital projects. So she's going to be running capital projects citywide for them. But as you know, she's done an amazing job staffing both the NRCC and Bike and Ped Committee and administering the Pennies for Paths and Pennies for Open Spaces. So we will be working hard to fill her shoes, and she will be greatly missed. And we will try and support her in her new role in Burlington as well. We are, Public Works, Planning and Zoning, and the Champlain Water District are starting to explore water tower expansion. We know from our 2017 assessment that was a piece of infrastructure that we are going to need to expand over time. It will require a community bond vote. We will be coming to you with many more details in the future. But in order to get those details finalized, specifically cost and timing, we are talking with some property owners about location that would allow us to build redundancy in our system, as well as serve our high service area, which is literally our physically high service area that I have learned. So we are exploring a second tank at Dorset Street. We are also exploring a tank on the Eau Claire property. So I just want to put that out there in the community. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me or Tom. Unfortunately, we did not get the VTrans highway grant that you all approved our application for a couple of meetings ago. Later in your agenda, you'll see we are looking at some ideas about how to use some one-time money to expand that paving program for this year. Of course, you would have to approve that, but want to let you know that we did not get that grant. Usually we get them on an every other year cycle. It's pretty consistent.
Did we get it last year?
We did get it last year, and we'll keep applying every year.
Remind me what this was for again.
So this was for, so right now in the paving program for FY23 is Dorset Street, that
okay.
connection between Garden and Aspen. But that's taking up the entire budget line we have for paving, so it was to go beyond into the neighborhoods. We have posted our recruitment call for folks who are interested in serving on boards and committees in this city for the terms that are expiring. So if folks are interested, please visit our website. The information is there and the application is there, and certainly counselors feel free to distribute that widely. Applications are due May 26th, and council will be interviewing candidates on June 6th and June 20th. Just a friendly reminder that Saturday is Green Up Day, Vermont-wide, and here in South Burlington. Can pick up bags here at the Welcome Center. The drop-off this year will be at the Public Works Garage on Landfield Road off Patchen Street. You can drop off your bags there by 1 o'clock on Saturday. And then I just wanted to, folks probably know about this, but we had a really fascinating day here on Saturday. We had 50 3 to 5 year olds and their parents doing the first session of Tykes baseball at Central School Fields. It's a really beautiful day for that, and great to see so many kids out. And then here at the Senior Center, we had our first spring brunch for our seniors that was served by the South Burlington High School girls lacrosse team. So it was a really lovely kind of intergenerational sharing. And then there are a lot of really fun things going on at rec in the libraries, and I encourage folks to take a look at their Facebook pages and websites. And I'll
Thank you.
Leave it there. Thanks.
Well, a lot of good and some sad.
Yep.
But anyway, okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, you will notice that we moved the Veterans Park report. That was in response to Derek Poirier, I think, and several other people about the park. And we felt we could move it here because we weren't going to have any action, but we can include that on the next council meeting, which is the 16th, correct? Yes, Tom.
So on that, I just want to recognize that. Thank you for this report to Holly Reeves. This is very helpful. I received emails and I forwarded them on to the city manager from concerned citizens about the condition of Veterans Park, and they are sending me photos and they want to definitely talk to the council, and I think they want to come back on the 16th, but this report also answered a lot of their questions. So to those that put the time into it, thank you for that, and that's very helpful to the Little League using Veterans Park.
Well, we'll have it on the agenda so that we can discuss it and have a chance to ask Holly questions. So I would encourage them, even if all of their questions were answered, to come. You might learn something new, and that would be good. All right, so I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda. We have 3 items: disbursements, minutes from 1, 2, 3 meetings, and then this Veterans Park report.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So that passes, and we move down to what we've all been waiting for a lifetime. This is the first time we will get an update from the Cemetery Sextons.
A lifetime and then some.
And then some, yeah, this goes into the next
Comes next.
lifetime. Yeah.
Why are they leaving? They may want to see this pitch, right?
I know. God, the price is right,
If the price is
even
right.
with the increases.
You got Olive Garden on one side and
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This was a very good report. Thank you. Good pictures and yeah, it's 1,000 words, you know.
A lot of old tombstones.
Donna, do you want me to share? The okay. Give me, go for it, and I will pull up this document. You do, but look at this. I can do it right here.
Uh-huh. Good.
So just tell me when you Want to click.
Okay,
Okay, so-
all set. Take it away.
Good evening. My name's Peter Taylor, and I'm the only one who's got a title up there. The direction I'm trying to
Notice
go.
that.
Oh, can you
Oh, are
guys
the
turn-
mics on?
press the little press buttons?
Green.
Not bright green now.
It's
Bright
not
green?
bright green, no.
Yeah, it has to be bright
Oh,
green.
gotcha.
There we go.
Better?
Yeah,
Great.
yes.
I'm Maureen O'Brien. I'm the secretary of the Sextons Committee.
And Donna Kinville, chair and your city clerk.
Is Chris Train on the online?
Oh, now that I'm sharing, I've lost my ability to see people.
Anyways, Chris has a very bad cough, and he was going to help us out with this, but if he's on, he's going to listen only. So.
Okay.
Start off some photographs of the cemeteries in South Burlington. You can see a gentleman who's doing some ground sounding to identify where there is open land in each of the cemeteries. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The next two on the left and center, that was a cleanup day we did. If you go far right center and then maybe raise it up just a little bit.
Sorry,
Can you
you're
do
off
that?
screen.
Can you get the full screen up there?
Well, probably. Anyone know how to do that quickly?
Oh, don't worry about it.
Is it, if you do the big X on the right, is that
Oh, this is a
Top right,
PDF, not a
left?
The
PowerPoint.
PDF.
Yeah,
Yeah.
top
that's
right?
why.
Okay.
I think that's as good as I
Okay.
can do for you guys.
All right.
You could do plus, plus, plus. Oh, yeah, but no.
That makes
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
You can't expand the window?
we're okay.
Okay.
Center right, you'll see a before and after shot of cleanup. Big difference there, and we'll talk more about that. The bottom left and center, that's I think it's the southeast corner of the cemetery, Shelburne Road Cemetery, near the car lot, and again, a before and after. That still needs work, as we'll talk about later. We can go to the next.
Sorry to interrupt
Yes.
real quick. Can you press Control L? Control L goes full screen with Adobe.
Well, there you go.
A little bit more, thank you. We can go to the next slide. Each of us are going to present a little bit on different slides, so we'll try to go through quickly and then answer any questions you have. The agenda tonight, we're going to review Sextons versus Cemetery Commission and roles, report on the 2019 list of to-dos and an update, suggest some new fees to you, headstone cleaning and repair on July 9th we'll talk to you a little bit about Eldridge Cemetery fencing and headstone cleaning, some thoughts about Shelburne Road Cemetery, and some items for future consideration. Sextons versus Cemetery Commission. The City Council is the Cemetery Commission in South Burlington based on state statute. You can appoint another group to serve that role, and that's up to the council. The sextons there's a definition up there, people in charge with maintenance and governing. And we'll talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing. Tom was on this committee before, so he's well familiar with it. And
like the
again, a list
sacred
of the
objects.
members. Pardon?
I like the sacred objects. Yeah. I do. Get that.
I'm sorry, I don't hear very well.
We
Can you take
forget.
your mask? I don't know.
We forget that cemeteries are sacred.
Oh.
That's all.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, so what we're working on here is trying to look at where we kind of were in 2019. This is pre-pandemic. It was Tom and myself and Peter were appointed to be the sextons, and we came in with no knowledge of anything about being a sexton. We're hitting the ground running with no knowledge. And so we kind of looked at everything that we had in front of us, and we kind of said, these are the things we think we need to really work on. There is no accurate listing of all our resting all of our people who are in the cemeteries. We have a hodgepodge of stuff that came from the highway department, who Sonny Odette was one of the sextons, and Karen was the person who was handling it. They understood their system. We don't get it. So we're trying to get a nice map where we can say these are the lots, and this person's resting here, here, and here. And that's a lot of work. And so that is one of our main objectives that we still have to come up. A lot of the gravestones need repair. They need cleaning, and those are still there. We've had conversations back in 2019 about the fencing, and statute says that there shall be a fence surrounding the cemetery. Shelburne Road is almost there. They don't have any in the front. And Eldridge is close to it. It's missing one side now that the airport took down, and a little side part that got hit in a car accident. We're going to look at lot pricing. We kind of looked at that point. Back then, we didn't know if our prices were comparable with other municipalities. And then we're always looking at, how do you make it a nice, peaceful resting place? So we're looking at benches, nice reflection areas, clearing of the bush and beautification of it, and just things we can do to try and make it look nicer and kept taken care of, I guess. So next slide. So one thing we did is, we saw one of the first screens, is a sonar of the cemeteries. It was kind of to verify the open areas, because we didn't trust the information we were getting. We hired a gentleman to come, and he did a walk through the cemetery with sonar, and gave us a nice little report for each of the cemeteries. And actually found out that the possible gravesite for the 12 soldiers that died during 1812 is not far from where the cemetery, where the monument we have is. It's just a little up to the, I guess what's that direction?
Northeast.
Northeast. Just a little bit.
This is on the Shelburne Road?
No, this is
No,
Eldridge.
this is Eldridge.
Over here at
Oh, okay.
Eldridge. So we were able to find at least that, there was a mass burial right next to where the thing is. Then there's another area that he made a comment of. It looks like a vault in which he would do mass burials, and we have never been able to figure out when Burlington had this cemetery, and they buried indigent people. There's no marker, there's no anything that they labeled that John Smith or whatever the name may be. So it's kind of, I think, my assumption, we haven't really talked much about, that is where the town burials kind of took place, in that one area in that vault.
Donna, could I interrupt just a quick second? Just so people know, Eldridge property was deeded to the city of South Burlington September 19, 1816. And the Shelburne Road property was deeded to the city of, the city of Burlington in 1816. And then the Shelburne Road was deeded May 3rd, 1831. So they're pretty old cemeteries. They've been around for quite a while. And they were transferred to South Burlington when we became independent.
Who deeded them?
Pardon?
Who deeded them?
Property owners.
They purchased them from individual property owners that owned land
I see.
and made cemeteries in those locations.
So were the bodies relocated to them from the War of 1812?
No,
1816 is post 1812.
The bodies from the War of 1812 weren't discovered until later,
but
and
they,
then moved there.
and for all I know, or we know, there could have been some grave sites on those lands when they were actually deeded to the city.
Right.
But that's when the city of Burlington took each of them over. So whether they were, I don't know if they were cemeteries before then or not.
They could have been private lots.
So,
Yeah.
can I ask a clarifying
Yes,
question?
yeah.
So we don't have a good listing of identified souls. Do we have a better understanding of how many souls?
We have, what I got from the highway department is a booklet, and it says, John Smith, just keep using that. John Smith has lot A3, but then there's no map that says where A3 is on a map. So, and then through the years, the way the cemetery's been run, if I bought a lot and then 20, 50 years down the line, I pass away and someone does a burial in that lot, I'm not sure how much the highway department knew someone was being placed in that lot.
Oh, boy.
These are our best guesses. Donna researched and found some maps for each cemetery, but it's not dotted out. This is exactly where these bodies are buried. There are some corner markers that we can work off of.
Sometimes.
But
I'm sure that this was a battlefield, so when, no?
No.
I
No, they
mean,
were
what about the
waiting to-
cannons at Battery Park?
They were waiting to depart, to be sent off.
And
Right.
And they caught smallpox.
Yeah,
Well-
during the War of 1812, there was an encampment of soldiers on the brow of Old Farm Road. And there was an outbreak of smallpox. And presumably, some close neighbor, which certainly Eldridge was close to Old Farm Road, they were buried there. But there's no proof of that other than we know that there's some type of mass burial there. Presumably, the soldiers from the War of 1812.
Right.
And this sonar didn't pick up, it doesn't, I mean, there's nothing left, I guess.
There's new technology out there called LiDAR, which is more expensive than the sonar. We've just started, we just talked about it. It's probably
basically, all the
That's
sonar
fabulous.
tells us is whether the ground has been disturbed or not.
yeah.
So if they can see it's solid and it hasn't been disturbed, the assumption is there's no graves in that area, and that's what we found out. So we have those areas. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Keep going, thank you.
And then, so what we're going to do is, in conjunction with the Vermont Old Cemetery Association, we're actually going to do our first headstone cleaning and straightening. They're going to come and show us how to do it. And so we're excited about that, and we'll be discussing more about that one later. Chevron Road Cemetery fence and swale cleaning. Last fall, we had our first round of it. It was very eye-opening, I think, in a lot of ways. Chevron Road, of the two cemeteries, needs the most maintenance. It's the one that we've kind of let go more than others, more than Eldridge. I think it's mostly because it's behind that swale and you really can't see. And if we open up, it's got a bunch of brush growing up all along the sides that come in, I don't know how many feet. To clear that all up and make it nice, good grass again, and then therefore be able to do burials there if we decide to do that. But that cemetery still needs a lot of work, and so we're hoping to do another one this fall as well to help get that cleaned up. And then we looked at our South Burlington lot pricing. We compared it with other municipalities. We looked at the dimensions of the lots versus other towns and what they currently charge versus what we charge. So those are things that we've accomplished since we met in 2019. And next slide. So this is kind of Tom's great chart from last time. We've kind of taken it and did that red line down the middle is kind of where we are in the scheme from when we first started. So we identified needing to find out open spots in the cemetery. We did that through the sonar service. We have, and we're going to present to you tonight, a new lot pricing for the cemetery lots. So those are two things that we have completed. And then this year, we're having, Maureen and I are going to be working on, hopefully, the formal plat, trying to get a better idea, taking that map that Peter showed you, taking the maps from the highway department and saying, okay, I can see Smith. Do we see a Smith on the map? And can we make these, and then does it make it work? If I look at the neighbor on the map, does it follow the thought process of I keep saying like a cell sheet, but rows and columns kind of stuff. So that's going to be a lot of work. So we hope to get started with that because it's something that I struggle with every day. And one of the biggest reasons I became a sexton, honestly. And then still working on the Chevron Road Cemetery, the fence, as well as dealing with the brush that's there and the swale that leaves a lot to be desired. And then kind of our long-term goals. We're still looking to improve the fencing, and we know that's a costly expense to the city. And we don't have a ton of money in the cemetery fund. We're probably about 11 or 12,000, I think, in the fund. So again, that's something we'd have to plan on. And then one thing has been I know is one of Tom's biggest things, and as well as ours, is reflection areas. Is to be able to have a bench or two in the cemetery to allow people to sit down and actually be present in there. And so those are kind of long-term things that we are looking at and still trying to work on. And I applied for a grant last year. You guys approved it to go forth, and we didn't get it. It was a long shot. I think we were one of the first cemeteries that they ever gave money to, but we figured you don't get what you don't ask for. So we tried. And that's kind of where we ended up. I guess next slide.
So can I just ask, the $11,000 plus or minus that is in the fund now, that presumably is from people who have bought a lot and
That's-
either are already buried or that's where they would like to be buried.
That is for people who bought lots to be buried.
To be buried. And so what is the financial responsibility that
Well,
we
it's
have?
perpetual care. So it is constantly doing the mowing, the maintaining,
Okay, so
cleaning of the
it's,
stones. It's not necessarily replacing the stones because, I mean, they're stones. They're gonna wear and tear, weather and the.
but it's not actually burying anyone.
No,
That's their own cost. Okay.
their own cost.
All right. That's,
And,
Yeah.
and some of those funds are monies the city has put into the fund,
Yep.
a small amount each year just to build the funding
Oh.
since we've started. So there's
Yeah. When
a
we-
little bit of money in the budget that goes into the fund each
Yeah.
year.
Tom Hubbard, two elections or two budget years ago, put 5,000 into that to get us going because we need supplies, we need to clean, we need a few things. And then there's $1,000 in this year's budget, which will go into this fund, which will make it to be about the 11,000.
okay. All righty. Thank you.
And next, and so this is what we were talking about. So we did a comparison of South Burlington's lot sizes versus our neighboring municipalities. And we found our lot size is pretty consistent. We have some people that have lots that are earned size, so it's much smaller lots. And we have others that have, one that take the casket or a couple urns in it. They range from, 3 to 8 but we were right in the middle of everybody. So I don't see there's any good reason to change the size that we currently have in our pricing. And actually, that's what the price of it is, 3.5 by 10 feet. Currently is $400 for a resident and $600 for a non-resident. So we went looking in comparison to a bunch of other towns and found that we were kind of on the low side. And so we're looking to bring forth to you in a future meeting, because we can't do anything today, is for consideration of moving the lot sales from $400 up to $500 for residents, and $600 up to $700 for non-residents. And then also to consider whether or not in the cemeteries we would sell smaller lots if someone wanted to just do a urn. So this is one of the things we'll be bringing forth to you in the next 5-6 months, I would say at the most, to come forth and kind of make that decision.
All right. Any questions, Matt?
Yeah, so we, as members of the cemetery commission, set fixed prices for the lots, is that right? Huh. So we convene like we do this is my first time.
Well, we've never convened.
Oh, okay,
This is our first report.
okay.
I mean, maybe in years past they convened, but
Well, back,
You know.
probably about,
you've been
5
around
or
for
6
12 years. You ever have a sexton commission
No.
convene? Yeah.
No.
I forgot the exact year, but Bill Szymanski, I was guessing Szymanski, I don't know why. The council signed off on a lot increase 8, 9 years ago, I believe.
Oh, it was longer
so
than
it's-
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on this for 10.
So, I mean, so that is,
It was
that is the process
probably
that they go through.
19 years ago.
Time
It was
flies.
Bill
Yes.
Simonetti. Yes.
I have some questions. So you're confident that for both cemeteries, you know of all the areas that are free and open and able to sell plots? I'm seeing shaking and nodding.
There could be more areas. I'm confident in the area that
We had areas sonared.
Okay,
And
yeah.
those areas we had sonared are good.
Okay,
Could there be more that where there's, like at Eldridge, where there's a lot of them together?
right.
Are there a few more lots that we could sell in between? Yes, but they would need much more work before we felt comfortable doing that.
So do you know how many pre-purchase plots you have that will be filled in the future, that aren't filled right now, that aren't occupied?
Hard to tell because they've still sold, because the information before is so scattered. And it'd be like they say a lot, but they have like 7 or 8 people in it. Well, you know, that lot is bigger than just a lot. So how big did they actually, and how many did they intend to put in there? So it's kind of hard to know exactly, you know, someone bought a lot and knowing in their mind that they can put, you know, 4 or 5. Right now, there may only be 2, but we don't know that's their intention. Or if they really
Okay.
did put 4 in there and we just don't know those other 2.
Oh, so one lot can fit a bunch of people.
It depends.
Well,
It
depending.
depends.
A ton of urns.
And
I
how
guess.
they classified it, how they
Right?
sold
I
it
mean-
back
or
in the
did they buy a
1800s
double or
and-
triple? Some families will buy enough space for the
They
family.
can all be buried.
And then they move out of state and nobody gets buried there again.
Right, right. So you have
Oh.
unrealized
That's
income
horrible.
from,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. There's no reservation booklet system that says purchased 1975 and
We could put
haven't
it
passed.
through VRBO,
I-
yeah.
Yeah,
Which is what we're gonna talk about later on.
But the city can buy them back. I mean, if they so wish, and then people came back and said, we don't want these, the city can buy them back.
right,
Okay, we got 5 minutes.
right. Well,
Okay.
so if there are, when was the last time somebody was buried in either of the cemeteries?
That long ago.
No, not that long ago. Slinsky,
Like
Shelburne
Shelburne
Road?
Road, probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's
Is
the
that-
only new stone down there, right in the middle,
Beautiful.
stands out.
There's one in Shelburne Road. And when was the last one in Eldridge, do you know?
You sold a couple of
Actually,
lots
I
for-
sold a few.
Oh, okay.
Just the last year.
Yeah.
So these are not hot potatoes, so to speak.
No, but you know, since we've taken over, since 2019,
Yeah.
we have sold more lots than they had sold in like 20 years.
Oh,
Really?
So people just weren't aware that we had them, and
I didn't know
as
we
soon
had
as the other
2.
papers started
Yeah.
going, and they took pictures of the sonar, and you know, other paper did things.
And the 7 days article.
Yeah, in 7 days. So just
do we have any leeway for alternative burial forms, like either green burial or?
We're gonna get there.
That we're gonna get
We're
there.
not- okay,
And
don't
you're
let me
running
rush your
late, we're
agenda.
running late, so
Sorry. Oh, plus
we'll
it's
get
7:30.
to that stuff, I think.
I'll be
Go
quiet.
ahead, Maureen.
Next slide. So as we mentioned on July 9th, the Vermont Old Cemetery Association is going to come to Shelburne Road and help us do some cleaning, straightening, and repairing. Of the approximately 80 headstones there, 24 of them are either broken, in need of straightening, or completely on the ground and buried.
Wow.
It's quite something. There is some prep work that needs to be done prior to July 9th, and we're certainly going to be looking for volunteers who are willing to do some heavy lifting. Our plan going forward is to take what we've learned from VOCA and use those skills at Eldridge and again at Shelburne Road if necessary. Next slide.
Okay. This is the Eldridge Cemetery, and before I jump into that, I just make a comment. We're gonna do that work on July 9th. Everything's pretty well screened in there. This might be a public works project, but I'd like it opened up a little bit, because once we do all this straightening, I don't want it to not be seen, not just because you don't know what goes on behind tree lines, and they got broken, they were broken in the past, and I hope they don't get broken again. So that's something we need to talk Public Works about and see what they can help. Just open it up even a little bit more, just to keep it open after we do the cleanings. This is Elridge Cemetery, and you'll see the blue line up there. That's airport fencing. You can go to the next slide. I think it'll. If you see the top slide, it's a photograph of maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, before there was a car wreck, which came right into that corner and kind of wiped out the metal fencing, which we talked about, I think, when I came in to be reappointed. And if you look down below, you will see, not the next slide, but the photograph just below this one.
Zoom out. Travis, can you zoom out on it?
Okay, there you go. You see the corner where the hit was and the box that was knocked down. And that metal fencing, and the comment was made, we should replace that with the same type fencing, which probably won't be inexpensive to do. When that's done, it should be done with some consideration that another vehicle might go through that corner and hit it again. So some kind of a barrier needs to be put in there.
Boulder in front.
And that is the corner where the 1812 soldiers are buried. And then there's a marker right there. And then there's the long metal fencing, which you see up above, was taken out by the airport a couple of years ago. And I asked Helen to communicate with the airport about what their plans were for replacing it. Do you want to comment on that, or do you want me to?
Well, I mean, they responded and they're looking into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned it twice. I will mention it again.
Well, I think.
I think they want to complete it. I think it got lost in the shuffle, and then we have a new,
It could be.
acting director.
But this has been quite a while now. And
Oh, I know.
things tend to get lost because I've been trying to find out, did we ever get money for that accident? If so, where'd the money end up? And nobody seems to be able to give me a good answer on that. So,
I seem to recall, oh boy, this is dangerous territory, but I seem to recall way back when I was on the DRB, there was a plan to fix that. I don't know if that, I don't know, it was, and then there's the landscape plan for the airport. I don't know if that is part of
I
that
think.
I think that's why they took
think
the
it
fence
is.
down, because they were going to do some landscaping.
And
And
then they-
then for whatever
didn't
reason, they
happen.
didn't put it back up.
Okay.
And I think it is, I think, Kellen, you might have mentioned they said something about it being in that plan. I don't know which
Okay.
plan it was, but
Yeah, vague recollection.
anyways, if we don't stay on top of it, it'll be like that for another 5 years, and that'll
Exactly.
be too bad, I think.
Well, I will make a note. Get it on the agenda.
Anything, other questions about that?
Yeah, I have one.
I think we should put up a nice fence, and I'm in favor. I don't think, compared to our whole budget, that it's going to break the bank. I think we need to do that. That's our responsibility, as Donna said.
Tom?
Completely agree. And there are some state statutes that actually put it as a responsibility of the cemetery commission, and there are some penalties if you don't maintain fencing. So I don't mean to scare us into action, but this is a long overdue. And a previous city manager looked into this and sort of hit the same stalls, and then same with now the new aviation director. Maybe we can get something done, but there really should be a fence there.
So we'll just keep pushing, and you guys can
Right.
That's right.
push back. Next slide, please.
Friendly, like.
Friendly, like.
Okay. So the Shelburne Road Cemetery again. Due to the perpetually wet conditions at this cemetery, it makes it very difficult for vault companies to come in there during most of the year. And we're wondering if we should, keep the lot sales open or maybe transition into a place for cremation only. Should we redesign the cemetery around the existing plots and possibly install a columbarium there? Those are just questions for consideration. Also, as Donna mentioned, we'd like to create a reflection area at some point, someplace in the cemetery and possibly closer to the road. Once that gets opened up, it'll be a more visually appealing cemetery. And maybe some benches closer to the road and inside the cemetery for reflection.
You got that on the next slide, right?
Yeah.
And one of the, when we did the sonar, he mentioned that the groundwater is 8 to 10 inches below the level. So it is a very wide
Ground table.
area.
Below the ground,
table.
wow.
Ground
Yeah.
table.
Wow,
yeah.
that's
So
not
it's
very-
Yeah.
pretty damp. over
Bury
there.
anyone.
That's why the vault companies don't want to drive in there.
How many graves are there at Shelburne Road?
About 80,
80
approximately.
approximately. Could Eldridge contain those if you moved them?
I don't think
don't
we
think-
need to move them.
Yeah,
I'm just asking the
Well-
question.
probably.
Probably could, yeah. Eldridge really is the most aesthetically pleasing of the two, and it's dry, it's large, it has a lot of open sky around it. It's not bordered by 3 parking lots and a busy road, and,
I'd offer, though, that I think Shelburne Road could be a very beautiful
It could be,
cemetery.
yeah,
It's, once the stuff is removed, all the growth,
yeah.
it would be a very pretty spot, and maybe a nice spot on a very busy road, like a pocket park
Pocket
or
park, yeah.
something, So, but those are the choices you, as the cemetery commission, will have to make.
Okay.
I'm just looking at a history. It seems like there was a famine in 1816. It was a cold June with snow. Here we are in May, just wanted to say that.
When the city, town works went in last fall to do the cleanup, the ruts that they created are at least a foot deep. And they're still
yeah.
there as of yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's just how,
You really can only get in there either midwinter or dry summer.
Would you like, Sarah Dopp is on,
Vermont Historical Society.
well, no, she's on the call tonight, on
Oh.
the Zoom, and I think she would like to make a comment. If you would like her to wait until you're done, because you're almost done, right?
Yeah, we are close. So why don't we
Okay.
do that, and we'll come
All
right
right,
back.
so Sarah, when they're done, we'll listen to you.
We're almost there.
You
So
probably
next,
have some
the next slide
historical
is,
facts.
so the next slide is really just kind of looking at the Shelburne Road Cemetery again. And just kind of, yeah, so it's just kind of looking, the swale area is that yellow line, kind of north-south. That is all filled in, and we did a lot of work trying to clean out some of that stuff in the fall, but it's still kind of needs still a lot of work. Fencing really all the way around is in disrepair. Next to the Olive Garden to the north and the car dealership to the south.
And
They
what's
have
to
it-
the west there, Donna? Where the dark brown
The reds,
arrows.
no, the reds are with the
the
red.
boundary.
Yeah,
the red
just
boundaries.
west towards the lake. What are those cars?
Is it part of the?
Part of the same car dealership.
dealership.
with Freedom-
Oh, okay.
Shearer, or, no,
No,
not Shearer.
Freedom Nissan? No. But what's
Changes.
happening, we're finding is where it's most damaged is where they do their plowing. And it's an open, so they just plow it all in there and the fences are going down.
Sure.
And
So
half
you need
are
to
down.
clean it out and have a nice fence, and they won't do that with a sign or
And
something.
Justin at one point had said that he had enough spare parts that he could do some work on that, and then it just got to be winter, and then Justin left, and we haven't really approached Tom about anything yet.
Okay.
So, and then again, 2 possible areas for reflection, whether it's something inside or on the outside or both. Pocket Park has been mentioned a couple of times, just a way for people to just sit down. And that's why I kind of, with the grant, was kind of looking for a bench area up in that front part. First, did a recreation grant, thinking it'd be a nice resting spot for people just to, when they're on Shelburne Road, just find a way to get a bench in there, and yeah, they didn't go for that. So,
And just to add, the easiest way to access the park right now, other than driving in from Shelburne Road, which is a little tricky sometimes, is to park in the Olive Garden parking lot closest to the cemetery, and there's a hole in the fence. And
climb over.
just climb right over and,
So, but we need a parking lot, right? We need,
well,
is there room for it or no? Can we,
unless you want to make that front part,
on Shelburne Road.
Yeah, you could make parking up front on Shelburne Road.
is it okay for people to park in Olive Garden or? Yeah, I know. Well, you said it here. I'm repeating what I heard.
We've been there many times, nobody's complained.
All right. As long as you order some
Just
pasta.
don't
right?
go at dinner time.
I think if we,
Some Alfredo on
I
the
think
way
if we
out.
put a gate in the fence, we would need to talk to some
Yeah.
people.
and we did that last time. Tom reached out to Olive Garden, they were fine with letting us park there.
And we'll do that again for our July cleaning event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do is on July 9th is we are going to be inviting the press there to kind of get a little more buzz about it. And hopefully, so we're kind of hoping that you as a cemetery commission might be able to pop in for an hour or two and kind of help and see what's going on and what we're kind of talking about, issues that we have down there. It's a good way to get a first view of what it really is like down there.
Can you say the date again, one more time?
July
Saturday,
9th?
July 9th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
So we
It's
have
going to be hard for
Sarah
me, but-
Dopp and then Walt
We got
Lucchini.
a couple more slides.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Just
pardon me.
so we've kind of got our work list. We know we need to make the formal plats of the cemeteries. We need to finish up Shelburne Road. We need to clean them and straighten them in both cemeteries. We need to improve the fencing, and we want our reflection areas. So it's just kind of a real quick summary of what we're still working on.
One more
then-
slide.
One more slide, and
Yeah.
then we're done.
And as we would like the Cemetery Commission to consider the following issues. As mentioned earlier, should the Shelburne Road Cemetery continue to be a place for traditional burials or perhaps transition to a site for cremations only? And our committee should have a draft of cemetery rules and regulations ready to submit for the city manager later this summer or fall. And as we mentioned, we're proposing increasing our burial fees. And we would like to formalize the documentation required to purchase a burial lot here in South Burlington. Therefore, we will know who has a deed, who doesn't have a deed, what plot they're buried in, where they're buried, et cetera.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your time and
Great,
consideration.
well,
This
thank
is a
you for your work.
fabulous-
I appreciate that.
It's fabulous work. Yeah.
Okay, so people online. Sarah Dopp.
Oh, I wish I had some wisdom to share. I don't. I've always wanted to know more about these cemeteries, and I know very little. Actually, you brought up the questions that I raised my hand for before. It was more along the line of where does one park to access the Shelburne Road Cemetery now? And, you know, if you're improving the area in general and making a nice seating area, et cetera, there may in fact be official visitors once in a while, and there ought to be, you know, clear demarcations of where it's okay to park and where it isn't, and the proper access to take. That's really all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Walt Lucchini? Do you want to put you have a nice picture.
We can't hear or see you, Walt.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not I don't know that he wanted to talk. He had just turned his camera on.
Oh,
so-
okay. All right. So maybe he doesn't. All right. Okay. Is there any other questions or thoughts by council members? Okay. Again, thank you very much. This was really informative. You've done a lot of work. You really have. And we all appreciate that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So our next item is the hearing. So we need to,
I'll move to open the public hearing on the proposed amendments to the land development regulations as warned for the May 2nd, 2022 council meeting.
Second.
okay. You ready for that vote? All in favor? Aye.
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 Open the public hearing. Paul, do you want to set the stage and we'll see if
Sure,
there's
I
any.
believe Jessica Luisos is also here
Hey
virtually.
there.
I am. Hi.
So Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning, Jessica Luisos, our Planning Commission Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. So tonight is the public hearing on the amendments to the land development regulations that you warned last month. We have not received any additional written comments since you warned the hearing. So this is obviously an opportunity for folks to weigh in, but there's nothing to read into the record at the moment. Procedurally,
you made a small amendment at your public hearing. A copy was provided to the city clerk and to the planning commission. The planning commission did update their report, and that's in your packet. And they approved the amendment to the report unanimously. Would you like Jessica to go to give a quick summary of what's in this round, or would you like to go straight to the hearing? That's up to you all.
What's your pleasure, council? Do you want a quick summary or go right to the public hearing?
For the benefit of the public, I think. Hearing
Okay,
from Jessica.
let's have a brief summary then. Thank you, Jessica.
You are very welcome. I'm here if you have questions.
So Jessica, I think,
I think we would like a brief summary.
Oh. I'm so sorry. Yes, of course.
We don't have
Perfect.
questions yet.
I thought Megan said go right to the public, but I missed that. So we have a few things that we have in front of you this evening. We had been working on a variety of planned unit developments through the last couple of years. In the fall, when we brought to you land development regulation changes, we did not have a PUD type that extended through a few of the areas of the city. So this amendment here would create a general planned unit development type that would apply to all of the areas that under the current regulations don't have a PUD type. Those generally being the more developed or higher density portions of the city. So this would allow for some flexibility in development. It is not currently changing density in those areas. We also, at the same time, we're considering some changes to site amenities. So there is a change to require certain site amenities across the city as part of new development or expansions. These are very similar to the amenities that are provided like in the form-based codes area of the city today, such as small parks and common areas for areas of the city, which at this point would only require green space as part of kind of a lot coverage calculation. So this would be more planned, programmed space, as well as setting some standards for the site plan review as to how structures on the site are related to other structures in adjoining areas, and some small technical amendments, including adjusting the master plan applicability for single user lots. That was something that had come up in comments during the last round of amendments, as well as some technical corrections. It's a general overview.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, thanks. So do we have do you want to say anything in addition, Paul, or should we go
No,
right
I think
to the
Jessica
public?
covered it nicely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the auditorium who would like to comment? Is there anyone on Zoom? No? If you wish to make a comment, doesn't have to be a question, it can be a comment or it can be a question. Turn your,
I'll ask a question that
okay.
I received by email, and I'd like to hear Paul and Jessica respond to it. The concern was that the lands where homes used to stand with regard to the parking amendment, because people were following this section 63 of the bill in Montpelier, that was removed thanks to our House representatives. They were very concerned that the amendment to our parking regulations might allow the same thing, which is to allow parking lots where homes used to stand. And I have responded based on my understanding of the amendment, but I'd love to hear you respond.
I'll take a first crack at this one, Jessica, and feel free to add. So I think that there's two things that are relevant that are different in this local amendment from anything that was being considered elsewhere. The first and most important is that the zoning in this area where the homes recently used to be, or where it's still green space, is still zoned residential 4. a use of land that is not allowed in the residential 4 district is not allowed, period, whether it's standalone or associated with something next to it.
Thank you. That's
So
what I
that's the
responded.
simplest answer to it. Also, from a technical perspective, it would need to demonstrate other things, but frankly, that's sort of the most straightforward answer to that question.
I'm glad to know that I was correct. Thank you.
Great. Michael Mittag, did you want to make a comment?
No, I didn't. I don't need to make a comment. I'm
okay.
just happy at the outcome.
Okay, great. Is there anyone else?
This-
Any other questions, Matt?
Yeah, is this the time where you ask questions? I just want to preclude the hearing from anyone else in the public that wants to talk.
Well, there doesn't seem to be anyone else in the public who wants to talk, so you may.
Just a couple clarifying questions, if I may,
Sure.
Jessica and Paul.
Go ahead.
The site amenity requirement, that's only in the form-based code?
No, it is mirrored from the form-based code.
Okay.
It would apply citywide to anything that is subject to a site plan, either a conversion to from a non-residential use in a building to a residential use, or to something that is new residential or an addition to residential if it's more than 5,000 square feet as an addition.
So say that last part again. So if it's
a conversion to residential,
okay,
so then it would apply. So if you're taking an existing building and you're putting 20 housing units in it, then you'd have to identify some space on the property to make a site amenity.
right.
If you are creating new residential, then it would apply. And if you're creating any non-residential development that is more than 5,000 square feet of building, whether that's a new building over 5,000 square feet or an addition to an existing one. The types of amenities, of course, will be very different depending on the user type, whether it's for employees, for patrons, like an outdoor seating restaurant kind of thing, or for residents.
Is there discretion within the DRB to work with the applicant and the neighbors and on that site amenity?
There's a whole slew of different kinds of site amenities that can be applied in different circumstances. The Planning Commission in this draft basically took all of the ones that were allowed in the form-based code plus some other broad ones and said any of these can apply. So it's a very broad tool to give the DRB and neighbors discretion to figure out what works well in a given circumstance.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
Great. Thank you. And then the follow-up to that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
Well, I just wanted to add to that, we recognize that there's some locations in the city that are very close to existing parks and recreation spaces. So we do have a provision that at the request of the applicant, the DRB may allow for up to 50% of the site amenity to kind of be, to use that existing recreation space offsite to meet the requirement. So that's another piece of the flexibility.
And I would just add one more quick thing to it, which is that Councillor Coda and Councillor Barrett, having been on the DRB, you both know that many applicants already provide site amenities. Many of them do, for whether it's their employees or it's visitors. And so this isn't necessarily a brand new thing for most folks. It's putting a little bit more description to what is what would be good quality, and giving a little bit of a framework to the conversation for the most part. There's of course a few that have chosen not to do it, but for the most part, many have done this.
A couple more quick ones, if I
Sure,
may. The second part is the civic space. That's not a site amenity. That's an addition to, or how is
Correct.
that?
So a civic space is a space that's set aside during the time of a subdivision. So it's a lot in and of itself that in a larger subdivision becomes a park, essentially. It doesn't have to be a park, but you can think of it as a park. A site amenity really is building by building. What's in here in this draft is that if you are of the scale of you're doing both, you can get credit between them. So it's not a doubling up on you. It's one plus, but not a doubling.
That's great. That's great. The switching subjects, all the commercial parcels now have a PUD type. I'm getting a head shake there.
All of the commercial properties would have a PUD type available to them, yes.
Excellent. I just want to say publicly, that's one of the things that I asked for in the first go around. I appreciate the expediency which Jessica and Michael and the rest of the planning commission and of course staff did to make sure that that was included in this go around. So thank you for that. Then my last question deals with the security area.
No, what?
The security area, the security fence.
The fence, yeah.
If there is a building that is on the security fence and there needs to be a parking lot, would that be if you were filing a permit, would that be a site plan application? Would that be reopen a master plan? And if so, what version of the LDRs would one have to comply with? Or third, would it be have to come with a building, a second building, if you're building a parking lot along a building that's next to the security fence?
So any commercial project in the city is an amendment to a site plan. So other than a single family home or a two family home, anything that one chooses to do with or request to do as a site plan, it might be an administrative site plan, it might be a DRB site plan, it might be a planned unit development that contains a site plan in it. But to answer your first question, anything would become a site plan. Whether it amends a master plan would depend on the conditions of an overall master plan and what it says. I'd have to sort of look more specifically into an exact scenario, but a master plan that is conceiving of areas of parking, it's not necessarily counter to that. And the third question was, what version of the master plan?
What? No.
What version of the LDRs?
What version of the LDRs, if you were to amend the master plan or your site plan application, would you be following the LDRs that we are passing tonight?
Any application is subject to the regulations in place at the time of the application, unless under our brand new master plan that was just adopted a couple months ago, you've been granted an authority to be vested under those rules. So that's brand new that the master plan can do that as of 2 months ago. Prior to that, no master plan can hold a set of regulations. So today, to answer your question directly, there is no new master plan yet that's been approved under the new regulations. So anything that was applied for today would be subject to the rules in place today.
Once we warned these land
Right,
development
as of
regulations.
a couple weeks ago, once you warn them.
Yep.
And then the last thing is, does this change regarding parking next to the security fence? Does this change a development of a parking lot on Williston Road? If someone were to build it, would they have to build a building in front of it?
The change here indicates that if a building is part of the security fence, then parking for that building can be in front of the building. So I think that's as far as I can say without going into the very specifics of something that
Understood.
is still potentially live with the DRB.
Right.
But I would say I can go that far and say that much. I want to be just careful that
No, I understand.
there's still open processes.
I understand. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we can close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing is closed. So now we move on to item 9, which is approving these amendments.
So I move to adopt proposed amendments LDR-22-01, LDR-22-02, LDR-22-03, and LDR-22-04 as warned for the May 2nd, 2022 City Council meeting.
Second?
That's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So that passes. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
again, I would echo Matt's comments. I appreciate the attentiveness and speed with which you really
Yeah.
responded to these additional concerns, both with the parking and the airport fence, as well as just finishing the PUDs, and so that what we had really envisioned under IZ has been largely completed. Not fully, but you've continued to move along, I think, in a speedy fashion, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All righty. So we can move on to item, pardon me?
I was just saying thanks to Paul.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Move on to item 10, discuss the status of Beta's permitting and the legislative bill 736 regarding municipal zoning parking in the airport. And we put this in, I asked Jesse just to clarify for the council as well as the public, just where we are with that, and
Sure.
so.
Yeah, so thank you, Helen. So there's been a lot of conversation in our community about Beta and this H736 in the last couple of weeks. So I want to take the opportunity to just communicate to the council and the community where we are. To me, this is really a success story in the city of South Burlington and in our region generally. A cutting-edge company that's at the forefront of the climate change discussion wants to expand in our city. When we found that there were local hurdles to enabling them to build as they intended, we were able to work quickly to address both their permitting concerns and the regulatory concerns through a local solution here in South Burlington. So there's really three different buckets that conversation sits in. There's the local permitting, there's the local land development regulation change, and then there's the state legislature bucket. So I'm going to talk about each of those separately. So on the permitting front, Beta was going through their permitting process with the DRB. The DRB held a special reopened public hearing to take in additional information from Beta that presented paths forward within our approved land development regulations. That special meeting was held on April 25th, the soonest day by statute that they could hold it after reopening the hearing. And on the morning of April 26th, the DRB issued the decision approving their request. So that's where we stand now. They have their approved DRB decision. On the local zoning side, you just solved that problem. You adopted very nimbly local development regulations that will solve this inside the fence parking issue that we did not conceptualize as a community in the past for all future businesses. On the state statute side, language, in order to, again, be very nimble as a region and a state, all paths forward were being explored simultaneously. So language was added to the state's transportation bill, stating that no bylaw adopted under that chapter would regulate the location of parking facilities at a municipally owned and operated airport. While this would have been a great plan C or D or E for Beta, we really believe that local solutions are the best solutions. And because we were able to bring those solutions forward, this language was removed from the final T-bill, transportation bill, through a joint request by Beta and the city to ensure that any unintended negative consequences of that T-bill language wouldn't impact the Chamberlain neighborhood. So that T-bill has now passed without that language in it. So again, I think that this is a really significant community success. That success is due in large part to the creative thinking of Beta, to the hard work of city staff to move something forward quickly, to the community members who came out and vocalized their intentions, and of course to our very diligent development review board volunteers who moved very quickly. So that's the update I wanted to provide. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just want to also commend the planning and zoning department, because they literally took this special meeting by the DRB and rewrote or wrote the decision in about 24 hours, when typically you have
45 days.
35 days.
45 days.
45 days. So, I mean, that was a major accomplishment, and time was of the essence, and I really want to applaud you and thank you on behalf of the whole city. I mean, that that really reflects a very dedicated and terrific group of employees. Thank you. Okay, Matt, did you?
Yeah, along that line, she rarely gets named. But Marla Keene does wonderful things for the Development Review Board, and anyone that sits on the Development Review Board knows that she is one of the very bright, and we're very fortunate to have her on our planning staff. But I do have a question that Jesse, you referenced, and maybe Paul could elaborate, which is the viewpoint that the language in the T-bill in Montpelier is in fact duplicative of what we just passed. Is that your assertion, or is that your belief? Is that Planning and Zoning's belief as well?
So I'll answer that from my office and Paul can answer it. As it was drafted and as I communicated to House Transportation, that language was not only duplicative of the local solution you just put into place, it actually went beyond that parameter, and could have negatively impacted the neighborhood, which was really what my understanding of the intention of the council was, not to do that, and so we advocated for it to be removed.
Is that what the Planning and Zoning's opinion
Yes.
is, that it's unnecessary given the language that we just adopted?
We would agree with that same assessment that Jesse just gave, yes.
Thank you.
Or I would agree. Can't speak for everybody.
Thank you. Megan?
Yes, I think it's also important for me to note the other people who were contacted by the members of the House Transportation Committee, and that includes members of our Planning Commission who were directly contacted by a member, because I informed the Planning Commission about what was occurring when the amendment was in fact reintroduced onto the draft bill. That was on Thursday afternoon, and that communication occurred between a member of the Transportation Committee, representative, as well as the chair of the Transportation Committee, and members of our community in the Chamberlain neighborhood who are making phone calls and emailing, and that's because I informed them of what was occurring. And so I just wish to also have this city recognize the efforts of our planning commissioners, of our citizens, of myself, and also I would also like to thank the members of that Transportation Committee who finally did hear from the City of South Burlington, and the City of South Burlington is a group of us. It's the staff, most definitely. They get our thanks for drafting this language and for working diligently with Beta, but the advocacy falls to our elected representatives as well as the citizens and our representatives, including the state, of course. Our House reps, Maida Townsend, was amazing. She stayed up till 3 a.m. on Friday morning taking care of this, as well as John Kalaki and Martin Lalonde, very, very instrumental in this, as was Ann Pugh. So let's give credit also to them. Thank you.
Tom?
So this is a sensitive issue, and I think a lot of you have been following it. I just want to offer some remarks, and I'd like to just put some things on the table because I think it's important.
Rehashing, is that correct?
No, we're not rehashing.
I was told I was not to rehash.
Okay. So it was stated that it passed through the House, and now it is not yet in law. So it comes back to the Senate. This is a very lengthy process where it goes back and forth. The language that was concerned, that is come up in this conversation, had the same intent to narrowly address this issue, and there have been 6 different versions, each
This
more.
is sorry, point of order. I was explicitly directed not to rehash. He is going back to the
Well, I
past.
think you did rehash
I
your
talked about my
role.
ancestors. I talked about my holding my word. I said nothing about what occurred in that House committee.
Speaking where it currently is, as it's a topic of interest, and where it's going next week.
Yeah, I think we can finish up understanding the legislative process and then.
Going forward, please.
Yes, going forward.
So-
Absolutely, and that's what he is doing.
He was going back to Leslie.
Senator Reilly, former Senator Reilly, can also attest to the process that this language that has had 6 different versions is now coming back to the Senate. The Senate has to concur. The Senate could go to a conference committee, or the Senate could, in fact, concur with further amendment. So then it needs to go to the governor. There is reason to highlight that in the last discussion in the House Transportation Committee, which is not rehashing, but to state other things that were proposed by yours truly, was that a sunset provision removing the adjacent to, and also only applying that to a building part of the security area, further addressing the very valid concerns that I share that our local solution came up with. This language is now no longer needed, but as it was being proposed, there was many factors, many pressures from many different sources wanting to have options. This was an option through I understand the process quite well, and the process is still working its way through over this timeline when we just approved these rules. I have a lot more to say about this. I'm not going to rehash the past, but I just want to make it very clear, nothing I did do I regret. Everything I did was transparent, and I'm not embarrassed by it.
Okay.
Because it's a transparent process, and I was taking in lots of different information. So I would welcome conversations from anybody that would like to know more about this, and I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And
I'll say more if more is said.
I think it's important to just understand for the public that whole process. And so it isn't a done deal because it's not signed by the governor.
Right.
But my understanding is that with my conversation with the his deputy, that he is not interested in impinging on local control, and he really understands that.
I'm glad
So
to hear
I'm
that.
hoping that he will sign it and it will be accepted.
What I would like to add, and I do ask the chair to grant me that right to speak, because I did watch the hearing in full, and none of what Senator Chittenden just said was
Point of
said
order, she
from
just
his
accused me of
mouth-
lying, and I take
was
issue with
said
that.
from his mouth during that 40-minute
Megan, I
testimony
think
that he gave. And I will add,
I would ask the chair to please stop this because this is
Megan,
rehashing, and she
if
just
he
accused
can
me of lying.
defend himself, I am a member of the public. I am
don't
a
think he was
constituent.
defending himself.
I think he was definitely defending
I'm
himself.
gonna-
And as a point of order,
I would ask you to not continue that conversation.
silencing a member of the public who is not only serving her constituents of her neighborhood, but also the city of South Burlington, to someone who is ready to turn
I was doing
our
the same
city
thing, and I
into
would
a-
ask that we use the gavel to
But
cease this
see-
discussion or otherwise.
Enough. I think most of this has been hashed out in the press already. Matt?
I don't want to give Tim a chance, but I just have a going forward approach that I'm not sure everyone will agree with, but I just have a suggestion, but I don't want to cut off Tim.
Just wanted to say that I think that the city council, staff in the city, business leaders in the community, and residents all understood the importance of this project, right? And its future impacts on our economy, the number of jobs it would create, the amount of income it would produce for the city, and the wonderful technology that will be generated out of this, which would hopefully reduce air pollution created by air traffic, and also reduce noise as well. So it opens up a lot of new doors in terms of air transportation, and I think it was a really important project. So I understand the amount of importance that was placed on this at the last minute when it seemed like there was a problem, right, both at the state level and the local level, right? So there were many rivulets flowing to the same confluence, right? And I appreciate that. So what I'm really glad was that we were able to reach a conclusion with Planning and Zoning and the Planning Commission, and we just passed that tonight. It retains local control, but I think the governor was interested, but and that was another parallel method that was not as desirable, but it was there in case something didn't go through. All right, so, and I'm just saying that everybody was interested in the outcome, which is getting this project through, and it was done the correct way locally, finally, and I'm very appreciative of that and appreciative of the hard work the DRB and Planning and Zoning staff put in. So
In
thank
the
you.
history of Vermont,
Matt, I think Matt was
1792, the governor of Vermont was reached by the president of our constitutional Congress, okay? Not by phone. We have phones today, we have email today. And for the governor and our senator to move ahead with this kind of legislation.
Point of order, you just
without
called on
calling-
Matt Coda, and
without
the order
calling
was
our
not given to
city
her, and
manager,
I'm not going to stand
I
for
find
this.
to be
Megan,
tyrannical. It's tyrannical.
Megan, I will not take this. I will not take attacks on my character and just let you go unspoken.
Let's
Thank you for using the gavel.
drop
You called
this.
on Councilor Coda.
Coda?
Nothing, looking forward, not anything in the past. We have embarrassment of talent and riches here in South Burlington. We have a great group of senators, representatives. Our chair is the president, I think that's your title, of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, a connection to Montpelier. We have a city councilor who's a senator. We have a city councilor who's a former senator. We are the second largest city, and perhaps we should consider the expenditure for a lobbyist and a protocol for how we handle issues as they come up in Montpelier. Burlington has a lobbyist. Other communities hire lobbyists when their interests are that there's ways that we could explore a protocol for receiving information that emanates from the State House, processing it as a team, and voting or deciding how to go forward. This is hodgepodge. That's what it was. But this is how legislation gets developed. It's totally different than what happens on the city council level. And that's why the city of Burlington has an advocate in the State House that can let them know what's going on, what the process is. We are lucky that we have so many good advocates and so much knowledge of what happens in Montpelier. But sometimes you need a professional.
I would say those professionals are our House representatives who did a fantastic job lobbying for us, not only on Tuesday, but also on Thursday and on Friday morning. They were phenomenal, and they did it for the little measly salary that they get as our elected representatives. And I thank Maida Townsend, and I thank John Kalaki, and I thank Martin Lalonde, and I thank Ann Pugh. They came to our rescue, and they deserve our tremendous thanks. And I'm sorry if I sound angry, but my words are civil. And the words are civil, and the anger is justified. The hodgepodge could have been cut through immediately by a phone call. Immediately.
I think there were lots of phone calls, but again, let's not go back. We can take that up. I think I hadn't really considered having a city lobbyist, but you may be right, because that could help inform and assist our legislators as well as, you know, the process. And we will know. But, you know, in terms of Jesse's job, she does watch everything that goes on and works on it. You know, some of it maybe doesn't need to come to our attention because it's obvious that's a city issue that we've agreed upon. But
It's back to, she is, our city manager is running our city. She's not running our advocacy in Montpelier. But sometimes you get locked on that job as well. And she's done a fantastic job. And I just want to tell everyone, I think she's done a fantastic job. But that sometimes it's too much.
But let me be very clear, I was running that advocacy. I was the one contacting all of our 4 state representatives. I was the one saying, this is what happened at the DRB. They already knew what happened. It was in the paper. Everyone should have known what had happened at the DRB. I was the one doing that, and I did it for zero.
Yeah, but there's a process where we all can get involved in the decision making, so it's not done by one counselor.
Right, but it shouldn't also be done by the city manager, right? And so it was simply communicating what had been decided. Okay, Mr. Cota, I was not at all legislating in those emails. I was communicating what we had already voted on, both in our council and at the DRB. It was public knowledge.
Tom?
I just appreciate if you, okay, thank you. I just want to say, Councilor Cota, I greatly appreciate those remarks and I want to echo them. I do think South Burlington needs some eyes on the ground in Montpelier. There has been other efforts where Burlington has a voice there. And in this conversation and why there's this tension right now, it's because there were multiple voices from different fronts trying to advocate for the same ends. And I really appreciate your comments, Councilor Barrett. I think we would have avoided a lot of this had there been a quarterback. And other than me serving as a senator, working on a lot of different things, trying to get this to the end goal. I wish I could rewind time, and I wish that I would have advocated for South Burlington or Beta or the governor's office to have a single person with all of these points of view to really coordinate, because this was, I think, unnecessarily complex. But I just want everybody to know, this is important to me, I was operating with the best of intentions for the same ends. And I was advocating to protect South Burlington's rights over those lands.
No,
And
you were not.
I was speaking.
I heard the tape.
I was speaking. And if you hear other things from others, I would just challenge you.
Please don't interrupt, Megan.
He's not telling the truth.
It's just rude.
Well,
he has the
and
floor.
what is not telling the truth? What is that?
Megan, you don't have the floor.
Very good. It's hard for me to get.
I'm taken aback by the accusations and the behavior, but I am not surprised by it. And with that, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think it was a success because we got him going. Oh, Art, would you like to say something?
If I can have 30 seconds.
You certainly may. Would you come up to the mic though? So.
There we go. Can everybody hear me? Just want to take a little.
Please identify yourself
I'm
for
sorry.
the public.
Art Klugo, Beta Technologies. I just wanted to have a follow-up clarification on the discussion earlier regarding the language that's been adopted. If I understand correctly, that what we have right now is for a project on the site of fence, we're now allowed to build parking in front of the building. That if we build parking in front of the building, that we don't need to have a building along Williston Road. That's question number one. If that's in fact what we did tonight, which is great, then for our application or another applicant in a similar situation, what is the process for going back and having the design as submitted adopted so that we can, or an applicant can move out on that? So those are the two clarifications from tonight.
Okay, Paul, can you answer that, please?
I guess
To the
what
extent that you're able to.
Right.
I mean,
I guess what I'd like to say is that the determinations of any application really need to rest with the DRB. I don't want to be in a position of answering on their behalf how an application is going to be reviewed. That's really their role and responsibility, and it's not fair to the process for me to preview that. But I could do my best to. Can you repeat the questions?
Right. So the first question is, it seems that some language was adopted that would have resolved an issue with our application. How do we go forward? And it's great. There's been a lot of good conversation. It's been promoted that there's a solution that will solve the challenges for our application. I'm trying to understand how we apply the solution that was described today to our application moving forward.
So your current application was approved by the Development Review Board last week. If you would, any fresh application, an amendment to or a new application could be submitted in the future that is under the new regulations. So that would be the process to apply under for an amendment or a new application under the now adopted regulations.
So we would either withdraw the
well,
approval.
there's no withdrawal because you've now been approved. You could let it lapse, but it's now been approved.
So we would have to let it lapse, or we have to amend the application.
Right. Yes, or you apply for a new project in the same general
We
vicinity.
take the same drawings, resubmit them, you give it a new application number, it qualifies as a new application.
Yes, but I guess I would recommend that if you were to just abandon the old project, you'd be starting at the beginning again. So
Completely
I don't know
understand,
that
just trying to
that's what-
understand the process, what the optionality is. Completely understand.
Yep, so it's a very common activity for applicants to make modifications to their project after their original approval. We've probably seen 40 from South Village over the years. So that's a standard practice, and in each one, the applicant would maybe make modifications to their plan. There might be new regulations that that affect their plan one way or the other, but that's a standard practice and process. Yep.
does that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay. Sure. Matt?
If I may, I just want to double down on my original question, just so I fully understand in my head. When you are amending an existing approval, you are then complying with the LDRs that are on the books as of the filing, or the LDRs that are on the books at the original application?
At the time of your new filing. That's what the regulations are in effect.
Thank you.
The only exception to that being the new master plan that you just adopted a couple of months ago affords the ability to hold the regulations in place for between 6 and 10 years if that's something that the applicant wishes to do. So
It does not mandate, that's optional.
does not mandate. That would be something that an applicant in some case may want to do because it creates predictability.
That's well designed, thank you.
Do you have other questions?
Nope, all set, thank you.
I have a question on that point.
Pardon? Yes.
So just, could you help me understand, Paul, what you just stated and how you clarified it very cautiously? Do you feel like that was clear to all parties over the last 2 or 3 weeks?
That that an amendment could take place after the regulations are adopted?
All interested parties on the specific topic regarding these rules. What you just described very carefully in multiple questions.
We just passed it in February, Mr. Chittenden. The new LDR amendments.
Okay, so
He answered that
Do
question
you-
about half
I'm
an hour
speaking-
ago.
Well,
I'm
let him
speaking.
answer again if.
That's fine.
Right.
Councilor
I guess what I
Locke.
can say is that we've done our best to be as clear as we possibly can be about what the state law establishes as process for amendments and so on and so forth. We've tried to answer as many questions as we possibly can from folks who are looking for clarifications, whether it's any of the parties involved. I can't say whether every one of them had the same understanding or not, but I can say that if they spoke with us, we did our very best to make it clear.
So just to follow up and close off my point, I won't say another thing on this topic because the night is running late. In my experience with this specific issue, what you just described was not clear to any of the parties that were working on this topic. So thank you for explaining it tonight. I think it's great that many are, but what you just came through in this conversation, not just to me, but to just about everybody involved with this, they did not know that, and I'll leave that.
Well, we will
This is
double
called a
down on our
phone.
efforts to
This is-
be
I
communicative.
think I know Paul's number.
Okay, we've got Roseanne Greco who would like to make a comment or ask a question.
Okay.
Or both?
All right. For those of us in the peanut gallery here, and I certainly don't want to get back into the controversy and the anger, but I'm just asking if we could just maybe clarify what exactly happened. Let me tell you how it looks on the outside. I know Beta Technology had an issue with our zoning. I know the DRB took it up. The Beta Technology raised their concern in the public and to the governor. The governor responded back to it, and then the DRB took another look and adjusted our zoning. And I know the applications have to go back and forward, and they took action, and the issue was resolved. And that's what I read in the paper. All right. What I don't understand is how did the state get involved in a city matter? To me, it was like, why is the state forcing or attempting to regulate what we do in South Burlington? That to me didn't make sense, and I didn't understand how that happened.
Okay.
I guess it's been resolved, but that's my question.
Okay, Paul.
So I don't want to answer the big question of Ms. Greco's because I think that's a broader thing, but I do want to be very, very clear. The Development Review Board had a special meeting. They reviewed a modified plan and found it to be approvable under the city's regulations. The DRB did not modify our regulations. They did not look at it through a lens of a lot of people want something to be approved or denied. They saw a modified plan and saw that the modified plan complies with the regulations. I just want to be 100% clear on the role of the DRB as a regulatory body. I will leave the rest of the question to others.
Okay, I think Jesse will try to answer that.
If I may.
Sure, and then we'll have.
I'll just say, Ms. Greco, I did my best to for clarity on this by a post on my Facebook page, and I really laid out the timeline as to how I got involved in this topic. And anybody that would like to understand at least my attempt to try to clarify the actions, you can see a post from this Saturday morning articulating how I got involved in the State House on this topic.
Okay, thank you.
One, I'm not on Facebook. I'm in a public meeting now.
Yeah.
So
What
I'm
I
just
will
trying to
say,
get information.
Roseanne, is that Senator Chittenden said Thursday when they asked him point blank, can South Burlington's regulations make it possible for Beta to have a solution to their parking? Senator Chittenden responded, no. Not without going back to square one and resubmitting a preliminary plat.
I will.
That was his. That
Chair
was his
Reilly, I'd like to
answer.
speak.
Can we go back? We had a question, her first question, and I think Jesse can answer that. How in the world can the governor get involved in local politics?
I would like to respond to the statement just made by Councilor Emery.
Well, let's hear from Jesse first, and I'll give you that chance.
Thank you.
So I think a number of things took place here. I think this was a really innovative, creative company putting into place several different paths forward, which I appreciate, and I think we as a city appreciate that they were trying to find a path forward to locate here. The governor, there are economic development and regulatory things we do at the local level. There are economic development and regulatory things that the state does at the state level. So the governor, as the highest elected official in the state, certainly always kind of retains the right to help the whole state think creatively about what to do, what is best to do, not only for a region, but for the state. And so I think the state got involved when they saw a company that was going to not only change the face of kind of vibrancy here in South Burlington and Chittenden County, but the future of our ability to meet some of our statewide climate change goals. And those statewide elected officials chose to intervene on their own.
And I appreciate the goal to help us think creatively.
Tom could,
but not to act on our behalf and to make us a feast
I just want
of
to say
Montpelier.
that this is by far the most exciting council meeting I've had in my 8 years of this body.
2016 was pretty
And,
exciting too,
it,
Mr.
It
Chittenden.
was. Thank you. Could you let me speak? Thank you. So I've been serving on this body for about eight years, and I just want you to know this is a very important topic. And I'm going to address former Councilor Greco's question a little more directly. So this is an incredibly important topic for the great state of Vermont, the region, and the city of South Burlington. And as many people heard, the governor's office made it no mistake. It was very clearly looking for a legislative fix. That was 2 months ago. They reached out to me, the governor's office, being a South Burlington city councilor familiar with this topic, serving on the Senate Transportation Committee. You'll see in the packet tonight an email I sent approximately 3.5 weeks ago. They originally proposed some language that was very broad. You'll see in that email thread that I worked to narrow it. I said, I don't feel comfortable with this language, and I worked with legislative counsel, and I worked at that point, 3 weeks ago, to find the most narrow of language. Then I called Helen Reilly, Jesse Baker, and Paul Connor, and I spoke to them. They gave me feedback. They said, we don't think we need it, and I agreed. I said, I don't think we need it either. And they said, of the 3 languages, if something has to move forward for additional feedback, they didn't agree or sign off on anything. It was just me calling and asking perspective. They said the 3rd one seems the most narrow. I then took that, spoke to this chair of Senate Transportation as well as the governor's person, and I said, I don't think we need this. It's working at the local level. Everything's fine. And so it was dead. It was shelved. And that's where it was left. And so I do not fault Paul Connor, Jesse Baker, or Chair Reilly. Okay? So that was shelved. And then the Thursday or Friday, right before the Development Review Board of South Burlington was to weigh in on this project, frantically, I'm going to use that term, I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but a person from the governor's office was very worried that the development review project might not pass. Those that know the legislative process and how the sausage is made, the committee, the Transportation Committee, had passed out the T-bill back to the House. So at this point, the only way to have something germane for a conference committee would be to add it to the T-bill. So the argument was, and I narrowed the language down even further, removed out or size. And I was given some assurances and side conversations that this was very narrow, just location, that the city could still regulate the size, the amount, the stormwater, all the other aspects of this. But what was most important is by putting it into the T-bill, I already had information that the House was not going to concur, that the House was going to amend it further. They were going to change, they had issues with how we changed the funding for maintenance. They had issues with the GMT reallocation. They were going to add St. Albans. What I knew was that the bill was not going to be concurred with, and there was going to be more time. So by adding it in that very narrow language at the time, I knew that it would give us more time, options. It was just an option to continue to discuss. But I was ready and positioned at multiple times. I said, take the language out. But as this was evolving quickly, and last Thursday, I actually told Martin Lalonde, have Chair Reilly come in and speak. Have Chair Reilly, please, because Chair Reilly knows what's going on. I was on the floor for 3 hours straight as these conversations were happening, and I had no information. So House Transportation, I guess, couldn't get Chair Reilly, so they said, Tom Chittenden, come speak. And if you watch the tape that keeps being referenced, I hope, and I recall putting many qualifiers in every action that was taken and everything I was stating, that I was not certain about this. And if you watch the tape, Chair Lamphere was already recommended and already had a ton of amendments and said, this is going to come back to you so you can fix it when it comes back to you. For those of you that know how the sausage is made, the session is winding down. But this, by no means, by them moving it forward, was the end of the story. It was going to just come to the Senate to overlay with this discussion, this action we made tonight, for the Senate to then strip it out. Or to alter it, to narrow it, to even further put a sunset provision, which if you watch the tape I stated, or to add that only apply to buildings as part of the security area, or to remove, and they had removed the adjacent to further narrow it down. There were 9, you count those 3, 9 different versions of this, further trying to address this issue. By no means was the conversation done last Thursday. I just want the community to know that I was acting in good faith to try to help a really exciting company doing great things to grow here in Vermont. This is the next IBM, the governor said. I am sorry and regret that I didn't call Councilor Emery on Wednesday night and talk to her through all this. I am doing too many things.
You gave me your word, right? You gave me your word.
I am doing too many things.
Show it to you.
I am working at the University of Vermont. I am a city councilor, and I am running for re-election to state senate. But I am not, and this is news I already told many other people, but I am not running for re-election to the city council. So you are almost through with me. I'm just finishing this term out through until next March, and I hope that the members of this community trust that I've been acting in good faith. And if you watch that tape, I stated very clearly that I want to protect the neighborhood of Chamberlain. I wanted to protect it. I was just trying to find solutions that would meet the needs of this exciting company that I want to thrive here and the community of which I love and serve.
Your word was your intent was not to harm the
that,
neighborhood, but that
I am
beta was the most important of your priorities.
Well, I think if I had $1 for every time a legislator got some more information and changed their mind on something, I'd be a rich woman. That's the process. I know it's not perfect, and you work toward finding an end. And sometimes you have to compromise. And if you don't learn to compromise, then you don't get very far, because that's what that world is all about. Now, unfortunately, I think we have a U.S. Congress that is in some other world, and they don't know how to compromise. They don't even know how to talk civilly. And look where they are. So I think we are successful. We were successful in finding this solution. I hope the bill gets signed without the language in it or any other language. And that's with you. Thank you. So let's move on to item 11, we talked about bylaws for all our committees. And we had some conversations, and Megan had some concerns, and I think introduced some language. And so Jesse came forward with a final?
Yep. Yeah. So first I want to say I think this is a really exciting step to get to kind of a set of standards for all of our committees. I do want to go over kind of the highlights of what's changed since the last version you all saw at your last meeting. But I do want to start by saying just why I brought these forward to you. So when I first started back in June 2021, I was really surprised by the number of boards and committees we had, and surprised that they all were kind of functioning under different set of assumptions. So we started making some changes. We appointed a staff person to each one, and the leadership team started working on some shared expectations. We brought it to you now because we really wanted that in place before the next round of appointments are made. So that's why it's coming to you now. So you have 2 different versions in your packet. The first version is a clean set of bylaws. The second version is a track changes set that outlines what's changed from the last set that you saw to this set. And the highlights of that, there are some wording changes that leadership team members found, things like that, and Councilor Emery's additions. So just to highlight 4 specific changes, I hadn't included that the Planning Commission under our charter has the ability to appoint subcommittees as well. So I've added that reference in. Per the council's excellent suggestion at our last conversation, I've added in a segment about annual trainings and orientations for all appointees. We added in stanzas about how staff and council liaisons are appointed, just to be very clear about that. And then I added in Councilor Emery's suggested language on conduct. So those are the significant changes. And I'm really excited that we are at this place. We'll leave it there.
Okay, are there any comments or questions that people have? Is everyone satisfied with this? I know we don't specifically use the word civility, and that was cited, but I think, Megan, you raised that objection at one point.
Yes, it can be used to silence. Civility can be used to silence people. I do wish to read the last paragraph.
So I thought you wanted it in here.
I don't want it in here.
Oh, I
No.
misunderstood your email.
And under section 9, it says, any committee member has a right to express personal views and opinions pursuant to our constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech. An individual member is free to voice a position, oral or written, on any issue as long as it is made clear that the member is not speaking as a representative of the city or as a member of the committee. And so I do take issue, as Jimmy rightly raised, that I've been silenced because I happen to be quoted in the press about my objections regarding this process. So I do wish to register that objection.
But you don't have any further objections on this
I do not.
set of bylaws? Is everyone else okay with it?
Okay here.
All right, so I would entertain a motion to adopt these bylaws for committees.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So they pass. Thank you. I think this will be really helpful as we appoint the next round of committee members to have the orientation, have even perhaps before they apply, read through this so their understanding of the role and their expectations for training and orientation and, how to be involved are clear. Okay, moving on to item 12. Affordable Housing Committee and the Housing Trust Fund are here to present their recommendations on using ARPA money. So we have Chris and Larry. You may sit at the table since there are two of you. Yeah, just make sure the green light is bright green.
Both of you.
Hello. Yes.
Yes, you may for speaking. It's
And just make sure the green light is really green.
It looks really green.
There you go.
Sounds really green. Right. Thank you for this opportunity to present. Or actually, first, let me say thank you for the opportunity to allow us to come up with a set of values for consideration by the City Council for how to spend $1 million in ARPA money for affordable housing. This is a great exercise, and the Affordable Housing Committee gave this great thought and spent numerous meetings and due diligence to get to this proposal. So I did submit a cover memo, just kind of outlining the process. If you'd like, I can run through that now, or if you've had the opportunity to read that, we can jump right into it.
well, we've had it in our packet, so I'm assuming everyone has read it. So
Excellent.
You can.
Excellent. Okay, so just a brief overview of the process. The committee recognized the uncertainty really around what 1 million can make in the development of affordable housing. And in light of this, the committee chose to provide many of different kinds of options that the city could consider for a wide range of developers, organizations to see an opportunity to pursue submittal by a proposal. So we narrowed down to an RFP process. We looked at situations that was it a land acquisition? Would it be a revolving fund? Would it be partnering with the UMAL to do something of a grand vision? And some of the constraints that we quickly realized was how fast the money had to be deployed. So to make best use of that money, leveraging existing channels, and allow the experts in the field of affordable housing to make an assumption, or excuse me, to understand our values and come back with some creative proposals for us to choose. And in that, we highlighted a set of values. Those values were outlined through looking at what other cities and how they were spending their ARPA dollars. We looked back at our own kind of big blue sky. What do we want to do? We refined that focus down to a roundtable discussion of where do we want to go with this. And we also had a working group to help expedite the language that we came up today. It was important that we include the Housing Trust Fund as part of those conversations, and they were brought in so that we could collaborate on this process to the end here. Anything to add so far? Excellent. So what you'll see on the packet that you've received in front of you is a statement as approved by the Affordable Housing and the Housing Trust Fund. This was passed on a vote of 11-0-0 on April 13th. And really the kind of the concept here is this will be submitted out for request for proposal. These set of values were broken down into 3 sections. That first section outlines, we're using the word all proposals shall. So we're talking about a minimum percentage of affordable housing units. It's submitted by an entity with 2 or more collaborating, having demonstrated success. And then the last would be that the information supported, that they have the capability to deliver this within the timeline as required by ARPA. Into section 2 is really where we get into the values. And we came to, it was hard to narrow that down. Like, we're not going to be able to solve affordable housing with this, but this will be a meaningful approach. So what do we want to see in the outcomes of a proposal that's submitted, and then ultimately decided by the city of which one to go forward for. So in no particular, these aren't weighted, but these are opportunities where on bullet 2, items D through K, these are all options where an applicant may strengthen their application by utilizing one or more of those values. So somebody who's coming in and they didn't meet any of these items, we would hope would be reviewed not as favorable as somebody who had met 2, 3, or several more of these options. Some of those options is exceeding the inclusionary zoning requirements. Affordable home ownerships is a majority of those units, that they are energy efficient and they exceed current requirements and get close to net zero as possible, that these units are located in the transit overlay district, that these units have a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms in that development, and more than one housing type, whether it's mixed rate and affordable, that they're targeting a certain area median income that does not exceed 60%. It was important to highlight that there's a difference in what kind of housing would be offered at different income levels. And then lastly, that the proposal would demonstrate how they're going to use the ARPA funds and leverage additional support to make their application stronger.
So lastly, some submittal requirements that when they submit their application, that they document specifically how many people are they going to help, and how are they going to have outreach to BIPOC and New American residents to take advantage of any new units that are built. So that's a quick highlight. So let me pause there and seek feedback or questions.
I have a question. In terms of 1A, the language says include at a minimum the percentage of affordable housing units required by our inclusionary zoning regulations. That's 15% or 10%? So I guess I had imagined that this $1 million would be exclusively for affordable housing. I would not want to use these dollars to, I don't know, subsidize a developer to throw in a couple more
Market rate.
affordable housing units to kind of sweeten the pot, but still have market rate.
Yes.
So what did you mean by that? Am I misinterpreting this, or?
If I could just comment, Helen, I think it's just a matter of understanding what $1 million might go toward in any project. And I think part of our intent was to try to make this available for developers to include affordable housing in a development that might not otherwise have inclusionary, but have more substantial standards that are not included in just the inclusionary part. I mean, if you think about building housing, $1 million is going to be part of any project financial plan, much like the trust fund when we had the two uses of $50,000. It's just part of a bigger package.
Mm-hmm.
So for apart from the nonprofits who build perhaps only affordable, this gives a chance for other developers to possibly use this to include perhaps more inclusion and some of the other standards that we included in the RFP. So I think it's a matter of trying to understand that $1 million alone isn't going to build a project.
Well,
I think that was one assumption. I think that, let me just say, $1 million could build a project. It would be 3 or 4 units perhaps, as opposed to something that might be a larger number.
Well, I did have a pretty significant conversation with Habitat for Humanity, which is a nonprofit.
Right.
But their scheme, if you will, and I don't use that in a demeaning way, certainly is 100% affordable,
right.
and it's ownership, and the money, once it's sold, ultimately with the owner sells it, or when they buy it rather, the money is returned to Habitat and they build more.
Right.
To me, it's sort of like a revolving fund. So $1 million would build many more exclusively affordable to own housing.
And I don't think this proposal precludes an application from Habitat for just that purpose. We thought
No,
perhaps
it doesn't, but
right.
it
Yeah.
well,
I am concerned also that our minimum percentage is just too little. And looking at, met with Sandy and with Monica Osby, Sandy Dooley, who's sitting in the audience, and Monica Osby. We looked at what where that kind of average, that sweet spot was for inclusionary zoning, and it was at 20%. It was not. What are you remembering, Sandy?
Most typical was 15.
It was between the 15 and 20 at least. The 20 was part of it, but 10 to 15 was on the low end. And so I would respectfully ask that that number be increased, given the fact, like Chair Reilly said, that we are making it possible to get more than the $50,000 that we provide every year in our Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
So just that was a discussion that we spent a lot of time on, and the scope of the requirements were so that we would capture a large net of applications, and we're not ruling out any kind of creativity. So if, just because we can't think of a wonderful idea, the experts, we're really turning it over to the experts to come forward. This does not limit it to that one application. We're hoping by expanding the criteria so that a habitat could come forward with that proposal that was spoken very highly, and with knowing the constraints of if we bumped up that inclusionary requirement, are we also eliminating the financial feasibility of that happening? If the $1 million isn't enough, how would something like that be realized? So that's why we added item D, 2D, which would allow for a higher percentage, allow them the flexibility. And we do not want to see this money, this is a high priority as well, that this is not subsidizing market rate housing. This is strictly for affordable housing, and we want to know how that money is going to be used towards that process. So it was a lower bar to catch a larger amount of applications, and I hope maybe at some point Jesse could talk about if this were to move forward, maybe what that criteria or that selection process might look like. So if you did catch 15 applications, and during that review process, one rose to the top, such as they were able to accomplish 20% inclusionary zoning, that would be a consideration to the process.
Yes.
My understanding of, historically looking back at, kind of the state being a benefactor for great projects, which I see this as an example of, right? That the bar is not set low, it's set high. That's where the great cathedral in Florence, Italy came from. It was a request for projects. So let's think, higher and bigger and bigger in terms of, it's looking at Summit Properties, and they said we could use the $1 million, and they have much more than 10 to 15% affordable housing in their buildings. So I hope that we are really aiming for that, for the creme de la creme of the affordable housing community, whether the private Summit Properties or the nonprofit Habitat for Humanity, and CHT and Cathedral Square. We have the creme de la creme here in the state of Vermont. So let's aim high.
Yep. So under that example that you cited, Councilor Emery, on the Summit Properties, that's one project that's an example of leveraging multiple funding sources to get to those AMI and mixed inclusionary zoning, where we would be encouraged by projects similar to that was they're already doing this much. With that extra $1 million, we can go this much further. Those kind of applications fit the criteria that we set forth, that they would be able to leverage other funding sources, and it's not beneficial that this would be the only funding source for the reason Larry cited. So this is shooting high, and this is capturing that. The feedback that we landed on was that the more we narrow those, the more we limit the opportunities that might be brought forward that we're not thinking of now. So this does not preclude that. A second piece, just to bolt onto that, would be we kind of had a discussion of like, well, if we had a little bit more than $1 million, that can go a little bit further. The parameters for the request was up to $1 million. We did ask in the application if you could do a little bit more. What could you do with a little bit more? It's not a commitment, but use your creativity to deliver a solution that the city council and the voters could get behind. So I share the values that you outlined, and I think that's consistent with the committee's proposal set forth here. Again, it's casting a wide net to choose from to take advantage of the market's creativity.
And I must insist, I've spoken with people who I won't name, but who are experts in the field and who believe that our 10 to 15% is way too low. And I really do ask us to consider going up just a 5 percentage point increment to at least the sweet spot nationally. I think we could go higher, to be honest, looking at what Summit Properties does. But at least 15 to 20% should be our minimum.
That's, are you talking about the regulations or here?
Both.
Yeah. So the scope of our request was narrowed to how to use ARPA funds.
Yeah.
Our baseline was we start with the existing inclusionary zoning requirements and we go up from there. So we're hoping that they're already required to do this inclusionary. We don't want to see that money used for what's already supposed to be built. We want to see what's bolted on top of that.
Okay, Matt?
I just want to say this is tremendous work by the Affordable Housing Committee and the Housing Trust Fund Committee. I think you've created a very well thought out framework, and casting a wide net, Chris, Larry, makes a lot of sense here. My question is, isn't everyone going to ask for the $1 million given the cost? I mean, are we expecting, as we think about how to utilize this money to maximize the amount of affordable housing we have in our city, have you any thoughts about whether this is 2, 3, 4 split up or 1?
So that's always a challenge when you have to divvy up a limited pool of money. When you have applicants that'll come in, do you dilute the effectiveness of that pool of money, or you put it forward? And I would encourage that we do not limit this. We haven't spoke about this committee. I'm just speaking offhand here. That we wouldn't add a requirement to limit that it's only $1 million. We let the experts come forward with an application, and then how that application is selected weighs that into consideration.
I think the timetable on the spending, committing this money is going to limit the number of applicants. Yep. It's a very short period. If something's not in the pipeline now, it's doubtful that it could go through the permitting process in time.
I agree.
Okay, other questions or comments from the council? Well, I have another one. I was disappointed to see in 2F that you're not asking for net zero. You're saying the closer to net zero, the better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, I serve on the energy committee, the task force, and our goals are a lot better than that. And when you really think about making a difference in a family's life with owning a property versus renting, even if it's subsidized, once you own it, your income, it doesn't matter if you go up $10 and you're not going to lose your subsidy. You own the thing. And the new apartments that Habitat built, or condos, their annual heating is $340 or something. That's affordable. So I think the technology seems to be there to build, net zero homes, if we're really thinking long term. And the conversation amongst the councilors is, how are we going to spend this money? Not just this $1 million, but all of the ARPA. And I don't think I'm making this up. I believe we all agreed that we really wanted it to have a lasting import to the community, not just be you spend the money and then it's gone. And so I think this just falls shorter than what I was imagining.
Yeah.
I know $1 million isn't a huge amount of money to build housing, but I think there are entities out there that don't kind of fit it into the market rate. Now, I know there's also other people who believe that it all should be mixed because, you know, you don't want to separate lower income people from other people. But I mean, I wasn't envisioning this $1 million going into a 5-story affordable housing unit.
Mhm.
I was really thinking of multiple homes turned into affordable housing with, you know, maybe several units all over the city.
Yeah.
And really, and that ownership piece. And I'm curious in this proposal if we, you know, have a great developer who wants to go up to 20% or 30%, Megan.
Right.
When if it's ownership and the person buys it, who gets that money? Does it come back to us to reinvest, or is it just that's the payoff for building it? I mean, how does that work?
I think that was one of the hardest discussions that we had in terms of the net zero discussion. And again, these are recommendations. I trust that you can amend them if you think that's if you think that's how that should go. I have to say that I think our overall task was, or our overall thought was, get some RFPs in. Don't make it so difficult that no one's going to apply for the money. And I think that's was behind a lot of the discussions, because that's how we got to as close to net zero as possible. And there's some weighting to in some of the factors. So.
Is there waiting? I thought Chris said there wasn't a waiting.
Well, I think it's added in as suggestions, and I think that would give one. I mean, I think that
it strengthen the proposal.
It strengthen the proposal, right? I mean, affordability and the energy and the transit. I mean, that's sort of the the smart housing development model, I think, is ingrained in this in a way that we also want to have some applicants who can actually make the timeline. And I'm not sure we had any preconceptions about, I know there was discussions about habitat. I'm not sure we had any other preconceived or understanding of any other, like you're offering, Helen, in terms of individual units. I think there will be some discussion about use of other money in terms of creating a loan fund that might help individual homeowners approach weatherization in their homes. I mean, there's other money but in this case, we're talking about this ability to build.
Okay. Megan?
Yeah, when I heard, Helen's idea for the $1 million, which I loved, I thought immediately of what I had seen on one of those Maryland, and I can't remember, smart growth webinars, talking about Olson Woods. And I had sent that to the Affordable Housing Committee. And it's a fabulous, green community in the heart of Portland. And that's what I had envisioned. And not another, what we see, usually kind of development. And I do share Helen's disappointment that this would not be, a neighborhood, so to speak, that this would not be something that would be unique, something that doesn't have to have the bar too high for people, but would get creative people saying, I really want to put my stamp on South Burlington. This is kind of my baby, right? That's what I had envisioned. I very much hope that we can remind you of what Olson Woods was about. Again, it was, single family, but they were multi-unit, but, they were side by side, and, they were not the 5-story apartment buildings, and they were surrounded by nature and in a very sensitively designed, community design.
May I offer some feedback based on some
Sure.
of the
yes, please. And then I will
opportunities
take
for
some comments.
improvement
I
on the
want council
applications?
to-
I'll start with Chair Raley and Councilor Emery here. So the options to strengthen application, if there's anything in here that would exclude Olson from being realized or a habitat, that's good feedback, because I had that specific example in mind, that these criteria do not, unless there's something that I'm missing here, that would not exclude that from being a reality.
It wouldn't, but.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
you kind of want to get the creative juices flowing by
yeah.
saying, think big, think, you know.
So, and then conversely, we have a proposal from Council Emery talking about Olson Woods, which we shared with the group and discussed. We also have a different proposal Chair really has offered, which is also not excluded from the criteria here. But what I think you will find is, if you apply those situations here, they check off multiple boxes, which would bring those applications to the top, I would hope, in the selection process, versus an application that came through that was, if you don't want to see a 5-story brick building in the, dense, and it's not reflective of what we want. I hope that those applications would stand out in comparison of those. But also, again, just to backpedal, we're trying to capture both scenarios here. And I think if we were to narrow it just to that one or to that one, how do you make both realized with such tight criteria?
Oh.
So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. I
think it's human size. I think, but not letting 5-story buildings be among the choices.
I'm encouraged by both of the situations that you presented are both realities under this proposal.
Okay. Are there other thoughts, Tim?
I mean, from our past experience, I believe that we've used a housing trust fund to help, like people like CHT or Cathedral Square nibble around the edges on permit fees and impact fees and things like that. And in the case of Summit, I think it's a larger amount of money, and it could be. And if you remember, they had a line item in there for another $400,000, that they're like, it could just magically appear from somewhere. If you remember, I mean, I asked that question, what's that line item and where's it coming from? I think, the signal was that they were hoping it would be ARPA funding, right? But
yes.
But the point is that, I mean, these are all great ideas, but you're not going to get any movement unless somebody has an application and they have a plan and they have land and they have a design they want to build. And if they're a nonprofit, they're going to get more units out of it, than if it were, a for-profit developer. So you're at the mercy of somebody who wants to build something and sees that they could get a little bit of money from you or from this process, which is pretty well laid out. I appreciate it. So, I mean, obviously, the biggest return on a large chunk of money is going to go to a 4 or 5-story building in terms of number of units you get for affordable housing. It would be nice to have some lower landscape type home ownership, but you're going to have a developer. It could be private, nonprofit, or whatever, want to come in with an application to do that. And you might never ever get that because land is just too expensive right now. Right?
That's what the $1 million is for.
Well, I mean, but $1 million is not going to go that far, especially if you're going to have several applications up until, the date that in 2024, right? So you don't have a lot of time because you've got to at least, obligate it, right, and then spend it. So, I mean, I think this is the right way to go. The question is, you have to wait for somebody to propose something to you, right? So.
Yep. And you're okay with just.
I think this is their first. Well, I mean, what if for some reason that's the only application they get for this funding, and they want to go from 10 to 20%? I mean, would we deny them any money at all? I mean, we don't have to spend the money at all if we don't want to, right?
If we don't obligate the funds, do we have to send it back to the treasurer, or can we obligate it for something else?
So we have to obligate the funds by December 2024, and then spend by December 2026. So if we put this out on the street and we only get responses for 700,000, and we keep hustling and seeing what we can get, and we still only get 700,000, you can allocate 300,000 to something else that we could spend in those 2 years.
Yeah. No, a wide net makes sense in this case. Yeah.
So I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Just like you said, as close to net zero as possible, could we say as close to 50% affordable as possible? Give it the higher range as well as the base minimum?
I'm not a affordable housing
It wouldn't prevent the 10%. It would just say as close to 50% as possible. Give them a goal.
The scenario you mentioned could present an option where $1 million isn't enough to close the dollars required to close the gap between 10 and the 50. So it'll contribute, and we would hope that they are leveraging other sources, Vermont Conservation Board, federal money. If it's in a certain area, it can qualify for extra money.
Right.
So it just comes down to is it enough, and would you be willing to contribute more money to close that gap if that money didn't exist?
That would be the bridge that we cross when we get there, but the 10% would be there, because you're saying at least a minimum, our current IZ requirement, but as close to 50% as possible gives them a goal, but they know that if they make it above 10, that they can apply.
City council still has to approve whatever
Right,
monies
well,
are.
and we can manipulate this
Yeah,
or change
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
but, I mean, I appreciate what you did. You did what we asked you to, and you came up with a plan. I just would note that I think almost all your committee is either in the room or online. Janet Bellavance and Darrell and Peters and Emily Krasnow, Vince Baldick, Sandy's here, and Ariel's here.
I don't think Emily's on the committee, but.
She's on the Housing Trust Fund.
She's on
the Housing Trust Fund, okay.
Yeah. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Is this on?
Is the light?
Ah,
light
now
green?
it's on. Okay, I wanted to say just a couple, well, first of all, D talks about you would strengthen your proposal, you'd be given additional weight if your percentage is greater than what's required.
Very good.
And if you just set up to 50%, it would sort of sound like that's good enough when Habitat could come in with 100%.
Okay.
And it would sort of make 50% look as good. Anyway, I just think that's a little confusing. But on the energy thing, this is a conversation I had with David Mullen before this process ever got started. And I talked with him a lot. And I said,
Mullen?
he's the executive director of Habitat, Green Mountain Habitat for
Oh, okay.
Humanity. And we were talking about energy efficiency and how much they do and everything. And I said, have you ever built a net zero house? He said, once in Charlotte, and I will never do it again. He said the cost to get, like, I don't know what our Heinsberg Roadhouse is, I don't know if it goes beyond the standards that we have or not. I think maybe it does,
I think
but
it does.
it's not net zero. And he says once you get up above 80, 90, how much you have to pay, invest to get 2 or 3 more % higher.
Okay, fair enough.
The return on your investment, the pluses and minuses just aren't worth it because you're taking money away from building more houses. So I just wanted to share that
Okay,
with you.
that's helpful. Thank you.
So, and the other thing I will share is, as I said, I communicate with David Fairmount. On Friday, he happened to say, he sent me an email and he said, well, what's happening with the city councilor's proposal for $1 million for affordable housing? And since Jesse had sent us the warning that included the memo and the RFP recommendations, I figured, well, it's a public document. I sent it to him. He was thrilled. I will watch this process very closely. I'll be happy to send you a copy of
Watch
his
or
email.
engage in it. I don't
Well,
want it just to watch.
It's not, you haven't approved it yet, so there's nothing for him to watch until,
Or apply.
for
Okay.
certain, until you take action. So I'd be happy to send you his email. But I was really thrilled, personally, I was really thrilled that he was thrilled. I wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just offer our task was to create an RFP. Our task wasn't to try to decide how the money was going to be spent. So I think it's really important to have a little distance from who might the proposals come from. Just in terms of, it would be wonderful to get proposal from them, but we should be careful about how much we, offer one versus another at this point.
True. Yes.
So one of our values.
For the
that-
audience, would you tell everyone?
Yeah,
who
my
you are?
name is Ariel Jensen Vargas, and I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Committee. And I love the CHT Habitat for Humanity model. I love it. It builds affordable housing, very affordable for the right, for the right people. But it does not build generational wealth. And that's part of the reason that we want a house, is we want something to pass along to your kids. So, and then pass along to their kids, and then change the neighborhood long term. When their model requires that the sale of that property goes back to the nonprofit, that family loses that increase in
They
generational
do
wealth.
get a little
Well,
bit.
they get some.
Yep.
They get some. They don't get. They don't get what it is to pass along to their kids, so to give their kids a leg up. And one of the values that we've articulated is to make sure that is to really state a value that we reach out to new Americans and African Americans and other non-white people who are especially disadvantaged when it comes to home ownership. And these would be exactly the groups of people who are most disadvantaged in terms of building generational wealth. So while I would look at, if we want to take Habitat for Humanity and they say, okay, they got 100%. Now we have a private developer, they got 5%, and we average them out. Yeah, we get 50%, but that's like conflating the actual impact on the community. That's why we're not so heavy with the percentages, because that's something to talk about. But we can talk about, but we're also going to be losing something. So we may, yes, have 100% affordable housing, but then if we're losing that other aspect of it, then that's something just to take into consideration. And that's why we're not being a very hard and fast with the numbers that we're pushing for. And that's why we're putting a low barrier, because we want to be able to consider a lot of things that are not exactly spelled out and their impacts on the community.
Okay. Thank you. Megan?
Yeah. Cooperative living is something that some people really desire, and in Charlotte, there's this cooperative a housing co-op. In Burlington, there's a housing co-op. What's great about the Charlotte housing co-op is that there's actual farming. I mean, there's land to farm on. And people choose to live without having, the great grandkids get the $1 million that you got as the equity increase. And they find it to be sustainable living. It's kind of a lifestyle.
But what I'm saying is that the CHT Habitat for Humanity model is 100% affordable, but it comes at a different kind of price, which is not described by that percentage. Yeah, it's a short-term solution. It gives that which is something to take into consideration. I mean, yeah, we need affordable housing. Is that a trade-off that we're willing to make?
Mm-hmm.
Or can we do something to really build home ownership and communities, especially with classically disadvantaged groups? So that's all I'm saying, is that we've thought this out in the Affordable Housing Committee, and that's part of the reason why we've set a low barrier and we're not really pushing hard for that percentage, because we want to be able to take a lot of things into consideration when considering a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sandy, you want to make another? Oh,
I just want to make a
Matt.
clarification. Ariel is a relatively new committee member, but she may not realize that our inclusionary zoning rules require perpetual affordability,
Right.
which are built on the model of CHT. And it's not just that, the state law requires that any housing and conservation board funding or
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
any of that funding has to go to perpetually affordable housing. Now, some of this new stuff they're talking about this year, they've been talking about 10 years maybe, and maybe not quite as perpetual as the current rule. But the current law is if you get state funding for affordable housing, it's perpetually affordable.
Right.
No.
No, for ownership too.
Everything.
Matt, did you have a
I,
comment?
I just wanted to ask, the clock is ticking on this money. What is the ask from your committee regarding, from us to get this RFP on the street?
Do you want me to jump in on that?
Ms. Baker.
So again, the charge to the committee was really to write the scope and the values that would become a scope of work in an RFP. And I think ultimately you all need to approve those set of values so I can go back with staff and write the RFP and get it out onto the street. Certainly you could send it back to the committees and ask them to make the changes you've discussed tonight. Or you could approve as presented, or you could accept what they've presented, change it tonight and approve it yourselves. I think those are your three paths forward.
I would move to approve these as is right now.
Second.
Okay, is there further discussion?
I wish we could do some loftier goals, but I would at least like to have it be 15% be the minimum, which is the minimum for of the rental properties that we have. Affordability.
I would like that slightly higher. How about you, Tom?
I'm trying to recall, the 15% is a concern because there's some projects that just wouldn't qualify. I don't recall a severe objection to going to 15%, but I feel like if we keep it at 10, there still could be projects that come forward with 15. I could go either way. I think it's fine as is, and I think projects that come before us with 15% affordable housing would probably more likely get the funding.
Well, that's probably true.
And
Do we have a lofty language, like the higher the percentage, the more attractive the project? Okay.
And we still have final say.
Yeah.
Right.
Widen out.
Okay. I mean, I would agree. You've convinced me, I guess, that the
don't
low
see
bar still might attract a high bar, a high performance, and maybe something really creative. I don't know. Well, we have a motion that's been made and seconded. So are we ready for that vote?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And thank you for waiting and. Okay, we now are going on to financial report, item 13, right? Yeah.
Where is Andrew?
Oh, sorry. That's so
Andrew's not here
here tonight, but Martha, our finance officer, is here.
Oh, where is Andrew?
He's sick.
Is he okay?
He's sick.
He's
Please,
sick.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not
He'll be
in
fine.
Washington D.C. seeing 85 Smithsonian exhibits.
His name is
in
clearly on the agenda.
half a
It was his
day.
intent to be here.
Okay.
But we get
Welcome,
Martha
Martha.
instead. So
This was a great report, by the way.
Yeah.
credit to Martha.
Yeah.
And all the department heads. Hey,
I
Martha
thought anyway.
Machar. End of March financials bring us to the end of the third quarter, which is critical in making decisions going into the close of the year. And department heads put together their budget narratives based on what is spent to date. That was included in the agenda, long document, lot of information. But overall, our spending right now is 66%, and that is consistent with prior period, but it's a little slightly less. Our revenues are higher, 90%, looking really good, but that is because we did interfund transfers that we normally do at the year end. We are trying to get ahead of everything closing the year, so that when year end closing comes, then there's not a lot of things to do, or at least we are ahead of it. The other things that we did, as I alluded to earlier, in making decisions is making projections as we go into the year end. We projected based on the current rate of spending to see where we will end comes June 30th. And those projections right now are looking real good, giving us a surplus of over $1 million. And that could change because there could be invoices that are not paid yet, and also some unforeseen things happening. That number might go down, might go up, who knows? But right now, some of the drivers that are giving us that big are less underspending on some of the programming, recreation programming that were actually not run because of COVID. That was also included in the recreation budget narratives, if you read through that, and some of the capital projects that were also probably not done because of the impacts on the COVID. And a lot of unfilled positions. I think we have talked to you about a lot of openings, jobs opening that have not been filled since the year began. And on the revenue side, there were FEMA spending that we had applied back in FY20 were denied, got approved this year, earlier this year, and we received the money that is included in here that was not budgeted. And the local option tax have been coming in real good than we had anticipated when the budget was put together. So that gives us a good boost into going into the year end. And also included in the budget memo, we stated a few of the items that we might be coming to you. We do not need a council approval at this time. It's just an FYI to let you know that these are some of the things that we are considering, and we will be coming to you when we are moving forward with them. And thank you.
Questions?
Yeah. Hi, Martha. Is there any impact due to inflation that you could point out to us?
The biggest impact I think we've seen is also on the utility side. I think we've seen a lot of Casella invoices going up. The rates have gone really up higher. And also on some of the capital projects that were estimated at the time, the rates of the cost of executing those projects is really higher than we had anticipated at the time when we were putting the budget together.
Thank you.
If I can just add a sentence, Martha's absolutely right. And some of the ideas that we've outlined that we're thinking about for use of the funds are very much inflationary driven. You know, we talked earlier about the paving costs going up and not being able to do as much. You'll hear later on about our labor discussions with our unions. So it may be a wise thing to think about how do we use some of this surplus in intentional ways to offset those added costs we know are coming in the future.
Because I noticed, the toners needed to print off birth and death certificates. There's an unexpected price increase in that, and
The HVAC filters too.
Yeah.
3 times we're replacing them.
3 times we're
Is
replacing
that because
what?
of COVID or the HVAC filters? So when the
Oh,
hot
that's
air,
right. Yeah,
cold
yeah,
air goes
yeah.
Yeah,
Is it-
those numbers actually went up. I think when the budget was put together with this building not being occupied and the need to change those and how often we would change those at the time, we did not have our facility manager. And he has been taking those and taking care of those and making sure that those are changed on time. And we've had a lot of higher number of HVACs changed than we had anticipated in the past or had budgeted at the time, or we knew at the time that we need to be changing during the year.
Any other questions?
Just a
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Just a comment. So I'm in my 8th year, and this is the best report I've seen. It's just phenomenal, and I just want to say this is a great problem to have. The savings that we have, and I just really appreciate the articulated report in all the different areas. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll pass it along to department heads as well.
Love the specificity.
Yeah, no, it's great. I didn't have to look at the numbers and figure it out myself.
Yeah. Martha, in this, really want to give the credit here to Martha in this new role for her as the finance officer for the last year, really is stepping up about how we present the information in a way that's accessible to folks and not just long spreadsheets, but really digging into what's the story behind the numbers. And really credit to her not only for developing this report, but also systematizing some of that going forward with the department heads so you get the information in a really transparent way. We are very fortunate to have Martha on the team.
Thank you so much. There's no further questions?
Just, have you had any bites on the vacated lease space at all?
We have we had any bites? So, at 19 Gregory?
Yeah.
So we have had initial conversations. We have realtor retained. I think we have signed that to try and fill this space. We've had some conversations. It is now vacant. EPS vacated as of Friday. It is a bit of a challenging site. It is worn, so likely we'll use some FY22 dollars to redo carpets and paint and things like that. But it is also, one, office space is not very hot right now, and two, it's in the police department.
Can we rezone it as affordable housing?
You don't mean heat, you mean it's just, there's so much out there.
Right, it's not hot like the market is flooded with vacant office space.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we're working on it.
Okay. Good enough. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the FY22 Community Services Funding Allocation. So that's like the year we're in now, right?
Yes.
And we have budgeted $15,000. Is Martha going to go through this with us? Oh, good.
I
Okay.
am, yes. Yeah, so included in there is a summary of what we've done in the last 4 or 5 years, and the city council approving 15,500 every year and allocating it to this organization that are listed on here. And we are here just asking you if this is the same route you want to take again this year and allocate this fund as they have been allocated in the past. And also on here, we just included the other organization that the council has allocated funds to in the past, but not in the past 3 or 4 years.
Right. In fact, I think what we did last year was do exactly what we'd done the year before.
That's
we just said, yeah, we had those conversations. This is, how much money we have, and this is where we want to go. What we did, I think all of us probably received the email from Dr. Childs requesting $13,000 for the, what do they call it?
For the
Trinity-
Infinite Youth Center.
Infinite Youth Center. And as I recall, this last year, we provided them $11,000. I think that was out of surplus, maybe?
That was
Is that
out
how
of
we did that?
fund balance, yep.
Or
Yeah,
fund
that
balance?
was a fund
Yeah.
balance. The request last year came in July when we were closing the year, and the council approved spending 11,000 of the surplus money to her, and that is included in FY22 expenses.
So, I guess there's a couple of ways we can handle it. We can agree to continue with what we've done in the past as reflected, and then consider maybe closer to the end of the fiscal year whether we want to commit more money to the center.
Yeah.
Does that sound? I mean, I don't want to wipe out all of the money we give
They
these
rely on us. They rely on us. Yeah.
current recipients.
And the scholarship fund is there for recreation. That's important.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can make a great case for all of them. That's why we keep funding them.
And
So
the front right of the whole food shelf blew off in some storm. It's just, have you seen it?
No, these are all very local.
Yeah, it's like underneath the eave on the right side,
wow.
all the, whatever it is, the sheathing just blew off or
Right.
fell off.
And the Steps to End Domestic Violence, that was a community member that we started a fund for. So
Yeah.
this is all very,
yeah,
very,
okay.
very local and meaningful.
Well, that's what I would suggest that we do, that we, continue with this and let Dr. Childs know that we will look closer to the end of the year for a fund balance. to potentially support some or all of her request. I mean, I think she was dealt a tough hand with COVID in terms of, you know, getting it going and fundraising and doing all that. Because I think we had anticipated, as I recall, more fundraising, more success with other grants. But it sounds like she is a grant writer
Gotten some
now.
grants. Yeah, she's gotten some grants. Yeah, she's
Yeah, but I think it was only $5,000.
right, right.
It wasn't enough to carry.
Right,
So
right, right.
and pay herself anything, I guess.
No, she's been doing it
All right,
all
well-
as a team of one.
So I will make that motion.
Second.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Could I just be very clear? The motion is to
Approve.
allocate the FY21 column for FY22?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Although it says we only have $15,000, and this is for 15.5. But I think we added, yeah, no, that's right. It is, it's 15.5. But we can
So
probably find
you-
$500.
Yeah, you
to
can just
make it
overspend the line
15.5.
by
Okay.
500 and.
All right. All right, everyone ready for the vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, next is liquor control, one of our favorite.
So I'll move that we enter the Liquor Control Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're now the Liquor Control Commission, and we have two. Gonzo's Indoor Golf Club, first class, third class, and Waffle Chalet, which is a renewal.
Where's the Waffle
It
Chalet?
just started. How they
They just started, that's the one,
That's
for
the
the
Alpine
Alpine
shop.
Shop, and it's,
Yeah. What's
and
going?
we,
They're already serving alcohol.
So I
they
think
have, yeah. Go ahead.
my understanding is it goes, the state's DLC year goes April 1st to March 30th, so they only had their first license for like a month,
They got
and then
paid
they had to
twice?
renew again.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right, all right, so a
I'll move that we
motion?
approve Gonzo's Indoor Golf Club and the first class and third class restaurant and bar license for them. And the Waffle Chalet, the renewal of their first class restaurant and bar license.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
What?
Aye.
You didn't say, is there any other discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry, is there any more discussion?
Yes, I visited the Alpine Waffle Chalet on
I was
Sunday.
going to ask you about the waffles, Tim.
And I took a tour of the entire establishment, and I want to congratulate the Alpine Shop on an excellent move and a beautiful space and lots of wonderful merchandise. And the chalet is in the back corner, adjacent to their virtual golf, swing area,
Oh, I
right?
didn't
So,
know they had
and
that.
I spoke to the waffle maker and the bartender, and I can't remember their names, and introduced myself as a city councilor and wished them luck in their new endeavors.
You didn't
and
get a free waffle or anything?
I didn't get a free waffle or for a free beer, but it was probably inappropriate time of day to have either of those things. But there were customers at the counter enjoying, and I talked with them, and they loved it. They had a good selection on tap, and not many taps, but what they had was good. So I'm looking forward.
Anytime is waffle time. I don't think there's.
I know. They were cooking the waffles right there, but
Huh.
yeah.
We used to have them
So
for
anyway,
dinner,
I'm ready for the vote.
breakfast for dinner.
So if you get a chance, whoever's out there watching, right, take a
right.
a drive to the Alpine Shop at the Hannaford Shopping Plaza.
All right, so are you ready for the vote now?
Yes.
All right, all in favor of granting these two licenses signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion to come out of the Liquor Control Commission.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we are now down to item 16, reports from councilors on committee assignments. Are there any? Megan?
Task Force, our last meeting was
Oh,
the
that's right, yeah.
21st, and we approved our final report. We voted to deny the airport's request for a rezoning of the 11 acres based on several things, primarily because it was not in line with our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan designates the northeast quadrant of the city, which is on the southeast side of the airport, where our general aviation businesses are, including the new manufacturing building at Beta. That is where those general aviation hangars and industrial structures should be located. And so it was a unanimous vote. And this will, of course, be given to the Planning Commission. They have a meeting on May 10th in order to vote on the actual request. Of course, that rests with them. If they vote to deny, we won't see it. If they vote to grant, it will come. If the airport's request to have that change is granted by the Planning Commission, so going against the recommendation of the task force, we will see it sometime in May, I would guess. So we'll see. And what else did I want to say about that? Employee in planning and zoning, so I just want to convey that to her. She did just a masterful job, I thought, since the it was residents who were running that committee, and she supported it very, very nicely. I thought that Brandy Saxton also did a really good job. She has a good way, a good prose, and she listened to us, and she came through, I think, with just really valid reasons, explaining, that this was our right was to determine the zoning on that land, and that was our really our sole. Anyway, she said it much better than I did, but our right, that is our power, our sole power, and I hope that we can maintain that local control. Thank you.
Well, thank you for serving on it. Okay. Other committees? No? Yes?
Just for the public out there who ride the bus, the 17th, the GMTA board will decide what to do with the fare policies. However, this is running a parallel track with whatever comes out of the transportation bill, which will likely go to conference committee and may include monies for zero fares. So I'd like to say I know what will happen, but I don't. But the time to advocate, if you want zero fares, is now. They've had a number of extensive public hearings, and that will culminate on the 17th of May.
How does it look, Matt?
What's that?
How does it look?
Well, I don't know what will come out of the transportation bill, and of course, if the transportation bill will be signed into law, and I'm not sure if we'll have that by the 17th. So it's kind of a challenging thing to do when you have a vote when you don't know where the money source is. You have to plan like you're going to go back to fares. But it'll be one of the, not to belabor this meeting more, but one of the challenges is that the fare boxes are old, right? And we haven't had to maintain them because we haven't been charging. So you have to get parts on eBay to fix the fare boxes to collect the money. So we've got a great team. At least I think I've come to respect them and understand what do you do in this situation? Do you come up with a whole new whole new way of collecting fares? Do you modernize that part, or do you go to zero fare? These are tough choices, and a lot depends on what money comes from municipalities that contribute to GMTA and to federal and state money that comes to GMTA.
Right.
John Moore has a very difficult job, and he does a great job. And he's also agreed to come and speak to us in July. I can't remember the exact day.
He's your new general manager?
Yeah.
July 18th. Great.
July 18th. Yep.
Okay. The Task Force for Climate Change met, and they're really moving along. And the last meeting was really interesting because several of the members wanted to kind of have some interim recommendations to come to the council before the final plan, largely because they felt so strongly that this is what we need to do, and they're all around housing, the building requirements, and they felt that it was in the state plan. It's something that the legislature, I know, is dealing with or has dealt with, and they were feeling that it made sense to hop on that sooner rather than to wait till July or August when the final plan is all together, because this will definitely be in the plan, and have the city hopefully act on that, because the sooner you make those requirements for building, the sooner we can start collecting the savings, in greenhouse gases and not wait another 6 months and then a whole bunch of new houses are built or businesses or whatever, and we've got even more global warming issues to contend with. So they wanted to just come in and demand it, and I said, well, you know, I think you need to have a little white paper that explains your thinking about this and a proposal to request this from the council. So I would anticipate that happening in the near future. And then the third kind of set of pathways and actions is what they call them. The third set is just all of these various smaller pathways. And we're starting to work on those. So, you know, I think we're making a lot of progress. We were unable to receive the updated numbers for South Burlington. They're having trouble generating them or something, but we should have them by the next meeting.
And our emissions?
So that
or-
those are our goals. Yes, so we know what our goals can be.
And is that for the city or for the whole?
It's for
I
the
mean, like
city,
municipal, I mean.
no,
municipal.
it's the whole city.
So our houses, our residential
Yes,
houses, our businesses.
commercial, all of that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
which are those are the real numbers you need so you can set some goals. You know what you're trying to change.
And who's doing that calculation?
You know, it's someone that the CCRPC has contracted with. I can't remember his name.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'd be so
And,
curious.
and
when's
it's
your-
numbers that will be current to 2019. So it carves out, you know, all the progress we made during COVID by not going to work and driving, you know. So
when does your report come out?
I think it's due in either July or August.
That's what I thought, July. Okay, could
So,
be August.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Good.
Matt,
Thank
did you
you.
have a question?
Just a clarification, were you talking about the updates to the RBs and CBs, the residential building energy standards and the commercial? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't know, the airport commission meeting had to be canceled because we didn't have a quorum. So we didn't meet. Okay. Anyone else? Is that it? All right. Is there other business?
This
Tim, you always
question,
have other business.
this question is directed to the city manager, Jesse Baker. Can we get some potholes filled on Dorset Street between where you're going to stop paving and then Kennedy Drive?
Sure.
I mean, there's some holes and really bad, you know, separation and delamination, and it's. I mean, I don't know if you have enough people right now and whatever, but it's warm now. The plant's open.
Yep.
So it's a really highly traveled, and it's like, you know, everybody's like steering around. You think they're drunk, but they're just avoiding potholes. It's the old Vermont, you know. Thank you.
So just, yes, I
Yeah.
can talk to Public Works about
Okay.
that. I had a constituent in Montpelier who used to say we kept the potholes potholey so that the police could quickly catch the drunk drivers because they were the only ones who were driving straight. Just saying.
Oh, that's funny.
That's
Okay.
But yes, we will work on
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
That was the city manager's
All
son.
right, item 18 is going into executive session, and we will not come back.
Just on other business, one other thing, just
Oh, I'm sorry, pardon
friendly
me.
reminder, I told you about a month ago, I'm gonna be remote and or en route for the next meeting, so whatever that's worth you knowing.
Okay,
It'll be
thank you.
spotty.
Yes, as people do get their summer vacations kind of in order, let us know, please. So we can make sure we both have a quorum or don't take up some controversial issue when people are gone.
So I have a motion for the next.
Yep,
event.
please.
So I move that the council make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge of the council's discussions regarding the negotiation of labor agreements with city employees would clearly place the public body at a substantial disadvantage.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I also now move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the negotiation of labor agreements with city employees.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Colin and me.
Yeah, who's inviting?
Sorry, excuse me, inviting in Jesse Baker and Colin McNeil.
She's got him. Senior Center.